Chapter 1440. Under Murong Yu's devouring, the young man's soul was devoured bit by bit. However, at the beginning, everything went smoothly. The young man couldn't resist at all. But don't forget that the young man's soul had already merged with Ling Ling's soul. The souls that Murong Yu had devoured were merely the remnants of the young man's and Ling Ling's incomplete souls. It was obvious that the young man had reacted the moment Murong Yu encountered a problem. The young man laughed loudly. "Little bastard, continue devouring? Why don't you continue?" Looking at the young man's complacent expression, a strong killing intent rose in Murong Yu's heart. He spoke with a cold expression. "Don't be too complacent. Even if I can't separate your soul now, I can suppress you forever. Do you believe that I won't suppress you immediately?" The young man's smile froze at Huang Xiaolong's words. If Murong Yu suppressed him, he wouldn't be killed. But he would never be able to regain his true body, and he would never be able to enter the one-town secret territory to obtain the Venerable's inheritance. In truth, what the young man cared about the most wasn't the Venerable's inheritance, but the Supreme Saint Godhead. Based on his previous strength, if he could refine the Supreme Godhead, his strength would definitely surpass the Chaos Ancestor realm. Even if he couldn't become a Venerable, his strength was comparable to a Venerable. "I don't believe that I can't separate your souls by force." Murong Yu swore in his heart. He sat down cross-legged in the Hichu Luo Shu and concentrated on devouring the young man's soul. Murong Yu discovered that although the young man's soul had merged with Ling Ling's soul, it was still not enough. But it was far from reaching the state of perfect harmony. With Murong Yu's current strength, he could barely separate their souls. Of course, if it were someone else, without a soul as strong as his, they wouldn't be able to do so. Spinning silk from a cocoon, more and more souls were attached to the young man's and Ling Ling's souls. At the same time, whenever Murong Yu came across the young man's soul, he would start devouring it. In the beginning, the young man looked at Murong Yu with a mocking smile. However, as time continued to pass, he began to panic once again. Although Murong Yu's devouring speed was extremely slow, if this went on for a long time, his soul would definitely be completely devoured. As long as his soul was devoured to a certain extent, Murong Yu's devouring speed would become faster and faster. In the end, it even separated their souls. However, he was powerless to resist. Time continued to pass. Year after year passed. The young man's soul was unscathed in the beginning, but it was constantly being devoured. 99%, 98%, 97%. The young man's soul was constantly being devoured, and the speed was getting faster and faster. "Stop it, you little bastard. Otherwise, I will annihilate her soul. Once her soul is destroyed, she will die for sure." The young man was anxious, and he threatened Murong Yu with a ferocious expression. "Both of your souls have merged into one. You will prosper together, and you will suffer together. Why don't you try annihilating Ling Ling's soul?" Murong Yu was not threatened at all. He only sneered. The young man was stunned. He really cherished his life. Otherwise, he would not have reincarnated and slowly regained his strength. He was only threatening Murong Yu. He did not dare to devour Ling Ling's soul. Therefore, Murong Yu ignored him and slowly devoured the young man's soul. At the same time, Murong Yu was slowly organizing the young man's fragmented memories. However, this guy's soul was not complete to begin with. Furthermore, it was being slowly devoured and devoured by Murong Yu. Not only were the memories small, but they were also messy. It was impossible to organize a complete memory. Devour. 80%, 70%, 60%. As more and more of his soul was being devoured, the young man became more and more agitated. From the start, all sorts of curses, threats, promises of benefits, and finally, begging. The young man tried all kinds of methods that he could think of. However, Murong Yu was like a piece of wood, unmoved. "Young man, stop devouring. I am willing to surrender. I am willing to surrender. Okay?" Seeing that almost half of his soul had been devoured, the young man finally could not take it anymore and took the initiative to surrender. His eyes, which were originally closed, opened at this moment. A cold, killing intent flashed past his eyes as he looked at the young man. I don't believe you. I am willing to surrender to you. You can control my soul. In the face of life and dignity, the young man finally chose his life. Muronyu muttered to himself, all right, but you have to separate your soul first. I don't want to control Ling Ling's soul. Although Ling Ling and Yang Yun were his subordinates, Muronyu did not want to control their souls. This was because they were not slaves. Furthermore, those people that Muronyu controlled in the God realm had already regained their freedom before he ascended. In other words, the only person that Muronyu still controlled was Guohuaming. The young man's face revealed a manly look. My soul and Ling Ling's soul have already completely merged. If we were to forcefully separate our souls, both of our souls would be severely injured. Although we would not die, it would take a long time to recover. No worries, as long as both of you don't die. I can restore both of you to your peak, Muronyu said calmly. However, his eyes flashed dangerously as he looked at the young man. The young man was shocked. He knew that Muronyu was already impatient. If he still wanted to separate his soul, Muronyu would definitely refine his soul. All right. I will separate my soul immediately. The young man gritted his teeth and began to separate his soul. Separating by oneself and being forced to do so were two completely different things. Muronyu had been devouring for God knows how many years, but he was still unable to devour and separate the young man's soul. However, in less than 2 breaths of time, the young man's and Ling Ling's souls were completely separated. However, just as the young man said, both of them were severely injured after their souls were separated. Relatively speaking, the young man's soul was much stronger than Ling Ling's. However, at this moment, he was still on his last breath and was struggling at death's door. As for Ling Ling, whose soul was weaker, her life was hanging by a thread. At this moment, Ling Ling's soul was like a thin piece of ice that was filled with cracks. Even if a strand of hair fell, it could be crushed by this thin piece of ice that was filled with cracks. Then, it would turn into powder and disappear from the world. With Ling Ling's own abilities, she would not be able to recover at all. It wouldn't take long for her to die. However, there was no way Muronyu would allow that to happen. Therefore, he unleashed a ball of spiritual energy and enveloped Ling Ling's soul. Furthermore, this soul power also contained traces of life force. Therefore, Ling Ling's soul was recovering at a speed that was visible to the naked eye. Within a few days, Ling Ling's soul had already recovered to its peak. However, this was still not considered a complete soul. This was because her original soul still had a part of the young man's soul. However, Muronyu could not help her with this. She could only rely on herself to slowly complete her soul. Go! After repairing her soul, Muronyu sent Ling Ling's soul back into her spiritual space. At the same time, he also removed the restraints on her physical body. Ling Ling immediately woke up. Just like before, her memory was not damaged. However, the invisible pressure in her heart had disappeared. Thank you, my lord. After feeling that she had returned to normal, Ling Ling immediately bowed to Muronyu. However, she was immediately stopped by Muronyu. Your soul is still not complete. You will need time to slowly recover. However, it will not affect you much. After saying this, he waved his hand and sent Ling Ling away. Ling Ling did not even have the chance to thank him. Ling Ling was grateful, but she could not thank him. She could only bury this gratitude deep in her heart. However, she was more and more loyal to Muronyu and Shenzhen. Even if Muronyu asked her to die, she would not hesitate. As for what Ling Ling was thinking, Muronyu did not care, because that was what he had promised in the first place. Now that he had helped him to get rid of the young man's soul, it could be considered as fulfilling a promise. After all, Muronyu was not a person who would go back on his word. He had been unable to help Ling Ling get rid of the young man's soul. This matter was like a sacred mountain that was pressing on his heart. After returning to Hichu Luoshu, Muronyu realized that the young man was looking at him pitifully. Without saying anything, Murong covered the young man's soul with his soul power and was about to control the young man's soul. Although the young man was unwilling, he could only be controlled by Murong obediently. Otherwise, it would have been as easy as flipping his hand from Murong to destroy his soul. After controlling the young man's soul, Murong finally knew that the young man was called Huarong. Before he died, he was actually a super expert of chaotic ancestor saint level. However, he did not belong to any sect and was just a rogue cultivator. Murong actually controlled the soul of a chaotic ancestor saint. Moreover, this person was a soul saint. After realizing this fact, Murong face was full of smiles. He was not interested in Huarong's power. This guy was injured and did not even have the power of a saint. By the time he recovered to chaotic ancestor saint level, Murong would have already reached chaotic ancestor saint level. He was interested in the young man who was a soul saint of chaotic ancestor saint level. One should know that even Hichu did not know about soul cultivation. Murong had always been exploring by himself. Now that there was such an expert around, both of them could communicate in the future. It would be of great benefit to the improvement of Murong's soul level. Master, seeing that his soul was being controlled, Huarong looked at Murong even more pitifully. His soul was also seriously injured. Murong knew what Huarong was thinking. With a thought, his soul power and vitality covered Huarong's soul. At the same time, Murong also found Huarong's memory about Wanzhen's secret territory. Chapter 1441. After reading Huarong's memories, Murong knew what was going on. Why did Huarong appear in the God Realm? He had said before that he was reincarnated in the God Realm after he had fallen. In fact, there was no such thing as reincarnation in this world. The so-called reincarnation was that Huarong's soul had not completely fallen. The remaining soul carried a part of his consciousness and memories and floated in the world. In the end, his soul entered Ling Ling's mother's womb. That womb was naturally Ling Ling. Then, he parasitized Ling Ling's soul. As Ling Ling continued to grow, Ling Ling's soul became stronger, and so did Huarong's soul. When he had enough power, he began to devour Ling Ling's soul. In fact, this was equivalent to taking over. Before he had fallen, Huarong was a Chaos Ancestor Saint level expert, and he was an expert among the Chaos Ancestor Saints. Although he was a rogue cultivator, he was a soul saint, and his power was comparable to a peak Chaos Ancestor Saint. Just as he said, he was killed in a Supreme Saint tomb. The Supreme Saint tomb was in Wanzhen's secret land. Huarong was a rogue cultivator. As a rogue cultivator, what he lacked the most were various techniques and various resources, treasures, holy weapons, and magic treasures. Even if he was a Chaos Ancestor Saint, it was the same. After all, his power was accumulated by various resources. Hence, he was used to loitering in various secret lands, especially a huge and mysterious secret land like Wanzhen's secret land. In such a secret land, danger and opportunity coexisted. As long as one was lucky, one could obtain some immemorial holy weapons, magic treasures, and various treasures. Even the inheritance of an immemorial expert. After all, Wanzhen's secret land was a battlefield in the immemorial era. Huarong often entered and exited Wanzhen's secret land, and he could be said to be a frequent visitor. However, sometimes he would gain something, and sometimes he would gain nothing. That time, it could be said to be Huarong's greatest gain in his life. Because that time, he had accidentally entered the place where a Supreme Saint had fallen. The place where an immemorial Supreme Saint had fallen. It was not a holy tomb, because there was no holy tomb there. That Supreme Being should have died in battle during the ancient war between the various races. Huarong had not found any Supreme Saint Godhead, Supreme Weapon, or any other such things. Thus he was unsure if there were any Supreme Saint Godhead or Supreme Weapon. However, he was certain that the primordial sovereign's inheritance was there. Even if he didn't have a Saint Godhead, as long as he had a venerable ancestor's inheritance, there was still a possibility of him becoming a venerable ancestor in the future. Even if he couldn't become a supreme, he could still surpass ordinary chaotic saints. After discovering the sovereign's inheritance, Huarong was so excited that he almost died. This was because he was the only one who had entered the place where the sovereign had fallen. However, as the saying goes, extreme joy begets sorrow. Just when Huarong wanted to inherit the primordial sovereign's inheritance, there was a strange change at the place where the sovereign had fallen. He was killed by the sovereign's inheritance. That's right, he was indeed killed by the inheritance of the sovereign. Perhaps it was because the primordial sovereign had fallen for too long that his inheritance had actually gained sentience and developed consciousness. At that time, it had directly swallowed Huarong's soul. If it wasn't for Huarong's quick and decisive reaction and directly self-destructing his soul, there would be no such person as Huarong in this world. I'm guessing that the primordial sovereign should be a soul saint, because his inheritance specializes in swallowing souls. When this trace of my remnant soul left, I saw that my physical body was safe and sound. While Morong was checking Huarong's memories, Huarong suddenly spoke. Soul gains sentience? Soul saint? A sharp light flashed across Morong's eyes. Then he looked at Huarong with slight suspicion. This is only my guess. Whether it is true or not, I will definitely enter the Wonjun secret territory again after I recover my strength. Moreover, I still need to retrieve my physical body. Speaking of this, Huarong's face revealed a pained expression. All of his treasures were in the storage ring on his physical body's finger. Moreover, his physical body had already reached the level of a low-grade saint artifact. This physical body, coupled with his soul saint strength, as long as he wasn't too arrogant in the divine world, he could basically do whatever he wanted. However, since he had entered the place where the primordial sovereign had fallen, others could naturally enter as well. Perhaps the treasures that he had collected in his lifetime, including his physical body, had already been taken advantage of by others. However, before he could confirm it, Huarong still had to go in and take a look. After all, the primordial sovereign's inheritance was still there. If that primordial sovereign is a soul saint, then it would be of great help to me. This time, I might have to enter the place where the primordial sovereign had fallen after entering the Wonjun secret territory. Morong muttered in his heart. However, even Huarong, a soul saint who had reached the level of a primal chaos ancestor saint, was easily killed. If Morong were to enter, it would be even easier for him to be killed. Therefore, before entering, he had to plan for the worst and make arrangements. Just as Morong was pondering, a continuous long howl came from the depths of the Hichu Luoshu. Morong's heart stirred, and his divine sense spread out. He saw that Tongning, who was originally cultivating in the Hichu Luoshu, was currently howling towards the sky. His realm had already risen from the first level of the Profound Sage realm to the peak of the 9th level of the Profound Sage realm, and he was only one step away from entering the Ancient Sage realm. His cultivation speed could be said to be extremely fast, and only a few days had passed in the Holy World. However, many eras had already passed in the Hichu Luoshu due to the acceleration of the time. To rise from the first level of the Profound Sage realm to the peak of the Profound Sage realm in many eras, he could be considered a genius. When Morong looked at Tongning, Tongning also looked over as if he had sensed it. Morong smiled faintly, and a large hand of power formed above Tongning. Then, with a terrifying aura that could destroy heaven and earth, it smashed through the void and ruthlessly suppressed Tongning. The strength of a peak Profound Sage. Come on! Tongning grinned, and the power he had just broken through surged, gathering into his right fist like a torrent and directly smashing towards the large hand in the void. Asterisk boom. Asterisk, the two large hands fiercely collided in midair, and an earth-shattering sound suddenly erupted. Asterisk rip. Asterisk, a large part of the void of the Hichu Luoshu world was immediately torn apart. As for the huge hand that was slapping down from the sky, it exploded with a bang. As for Tongning, although he did not suffer any injuries, he was knocked back tens of thousands of kilometers before he could stabilize his body. Your strength is not bad. Next, I will use the strength of a first-level ancient sage to attack. Be careful. Murong Yu's faint voice resounded in the void, and then a large hand that was 10 times more terrifying than the previous one instantly formed, and once again ruthlessly suppressed Tongning. Tongning roared, and the power in his body surged violently, pouring into his right fist like stormy waves. At the same time, he took a step forward, directly crushing the void beneath his feet, and then quickly punched out. Asterisk rumble. Asterisk the fist had not yet arrived, but the aura that erupted from it had already torn the void apart. Asterisk boom. Puff. Asterisk in a split second. The power of the two sides met again in the void. A terrifying impact instantly formed, immediately shattering the nearby void. Then, with the point of impact as the center, it quickly dissipated in all directions, and wherever it passed, large pieces of the void would shatter. Thump, thump, thump. The large hand condensed by Murong Yu stood above the sky, unmoving. However, Tongning violently spat out a mouthful of blood and retreated step by step. Every step he took shattered the void within a radius of tens of thousands of kilometers, and Tongning retreated tens of thousands of steps before stabilizing his body. Asterisk roar. Asterisk as soon as he stabilized his body, Tongning roared. Then his body began to swell rapidly. He surpassed his original height of 10 feet in one fell swoop, reaching a height of 20 feet. And what Tongning's physical body expanded was not only his physical body, but his realm also skyrocketed. He had reached the 3rd level of the ancient sage realm, and this was because Tongning was only at the peak of the profound sage realm. It should be known that when he was at the 1st level of the profound sage realm, if he used the power of his bloodline, his realm would directly skyrocket by 8 small realms, reaching the peak of the profound sage realm. Eat my palm. Murong Yu roared, and the aura of his large hand skyrocketed, reaching the 3rd level of the ancient sage realm. At the same time, he slapped down with his palm. Tongning also roared, and once again punched out to meet Murong Yu's attack head-on. The sky fell, and the earth cracked, destroying the world. When everything calmed down, Tongning stood on the spot and laughed loudly. Murong Yu's large hand also reappeared in the void. The two of them collided head-on, and in terms of strength, they were evenly matched. After Tongning transformed, his strength could definitely contend with a 3rd level of the ancient sage realm. Of course, this was only a comparison of strength. There were many factors in whether one could defeat a 3rd level ancient sage. For example, one's combat experience, the strength of one's cultivation technique, saint artifacts, magical treasures, and so on. These were all factors that could not be ignored. However, Murong Yu believed that Tongning's strength could definitely contend with an ordinary 3rd level ancient sage, and even kill one. At this point, Murong Yu's arrangements for entering the Wenzhen secret territory were basically in place. It was time to enter the Wenzhen secret territory. In the next few days, apart from making some arrangements, Murong Yu spent all day with the girls. However, while he was doing it with the girls, inadvertently thought of Zhao Jiqing. However, with his current strength, he could not go to the Phoenix clan to ask for her. Therefore, he could only forcefully suppress his longing for Zhao Jiqing. A month later, Murong Yu finally took Tongning on the journey to the capital of the 9 Holy Empire. If one wanted to enter the Wenzhen secret territory from the 9 Holy Empire, they had to go through a transmission array in the capital. Otherwise, if Murong Yu wanted to enter the Wenzhen secret territory, he could only go to other holy empires or other major forces. Chapter 1442. The Wenzhen secret territory was an extremely large secret territory. It had been discovered a long time ago, and with the efforts of countless powerhouses, there was more than one entrance to the Wenzhen secret territory. There were entrances scattered among the various races in the Holy World. There was also an entrance in the human territory. In principle, the Wenzhen secret territory did not restrict the strength of those who entered. It could be said that anyone could enter. However, there was only one entrance in the human territory. The human territory was extremely vast, and ordinary people would need an extremely long time to fly to the entrance. Even super powerhouses would not be able to do so easily. Thus, many years later, a teleportation array was built at the entrance to the One Jun secret territory. There was also a teleportation array in the capital of the Nine In Holy Kingdom. However, if one wanted to use this teleportation array to reach the entrance to the One Jun secret territory, they would need to pay a top-grade Saint artifact. If one did not want to pay and wanted to enter the One Jun secret territory, it's not that you can't do it. You can fly there yourself. However, even Saint Kings and Ancestral Saints would need a very long time to fly from the Holy Kingdom of Nine In to One Jun Mystery Dimension, let alone other places that are even further away. Thus, many people paid a top-grade Saint artifact. Because of this teleportation array, the Nine In Holy Kingdom received countless top-grade Saint artifacts every day. It could be said that there were so many that it was impossible to count. There were countless other holy kingdoms and forces similar to the Nine In Holy Kingdom. After Murong Yu paid a top-grade Saint artifact, he was teleported to the entrance of the One Jun secret territory. Whoosh! When Murong Yu stepped out of the teleportation array, he was greeted by an incomparably majestic giant city. It was called a giant city not because of how tall the city walls were, but because of the size of the city. It was extremely large. It was even thousands of times larger than the capital of the Nine In Holy Kingdom. As far as the eye could see, there was no end to it. Some of the weaker saints might not even be able to cover the entire city with their divine sense. However, after thinking about it for a moment, Murong Yu understood. After all, this was the entrance to the One Jun secret territory. Almost all of the human territory had gathered here, so it would be strange if it was not huge. The giant city was called One Jun. It was named after the One Jun secret territory. Elixir stores, heavenly materials, and earthly treasure stores, sacred artifacts, magic treasures. There were all kinds of stores. However, Murong Yu was not interested in these things. He took a step forward and disappeared from where he stood. When he reappeared, he was already in front of the entrance to One Jun's secret territory. This was a modeled stone door that was as tall as a person. The stones on it were covered in moss, and some parts had been worn down and shattered. Some places were even filled with sword slashes. The stones on the stone door were all red, like fresh blood. It constantly emitted a frightening aura. It was ancient and full of vicissitudes, filled with an ancient aura. From afar, this stone gate looked like a gate with a long history in the mortal world. There was nothing special about it. However, when Murong Yu stood in front of the stone door, his body froze. His eyes were fixed on the stone door as a bright light flickered in the depths of his eyes. At the same time, a look of shock appeared on his face. An ancient, and incomparably vast aura emanated from the stone door, sweeping towards Murong Yu in an overwhelming manner. The terrifying aura was like a vast ocean, formed by the combination of all kinds of different auras. Ruthless, cruel, gentle, and cold, it was full of murderous intent. It was extremely tragic and cruel. Murong Yu even smelled the scent of blood. It was as if the stone door had been through a lot of wars. The terrifying aura Murong Yu felt was the murderous aura on the battlefield, the aura formed by countless powerhouses. Brother, this is your first time in Wenjun's secret territory, right? You've heard that this stone door was successfully built by ancient powerhouses using sacred stones collected from the ancient battlefield. Some people even say that you can feel the bitterness and cruelty of the ancient war from the stone door. Just as Murong Yu was feeling the terrifying aura of the stone door, a voice suddenly sounded in his ears. Murong Yu immediately retracted his consciousness from the stone door and turned to look at the person who spoke. He saw that the other party was only a skinny young man. However, his strength was not bad, having already reached the 5th level of the undead stage, which was higher than Murong Yu's cultivation level. This stone door was built from the sacred stones of the ancient battlefield. Murong-yu asked in surprise. The skinny young man immediately looked at Murong-yu in surprise. I thought you were also fooled by others. However, according to the legends, this is the truth. However, legends are just legends. This is simply impossible, because no one can feel the aura of the ancient battlefield from this stone door. A glint flashed across the depths of Murong-yu's eyes. He knew that the skinny young man's words were most likely the truth. If the stone door was not built from the stones of the ancient battlefield, then why would there be such a terrifying aura on it? Although the aura was relatively weak, this stone door was just an ordinary stone from the ancient battlefield. Moreover, it had been built as a stone door since ancient times. Even if there was an extremely strong aura inside, it would probably be annihilated by time. The aura is still so strong even after so long. Then how tragic is the aura of the true ancient battlefield? And how terrifying was the ancient war back then? Murong-yu pondered in his heart, but his eyes flashed with a glint. At this moment, he wanted nothing more than to immediately enter the Wonjun secret realm and personally see the ancient battlefield. However, the ancient battlefield was not so easy to enter. The true ancient battlefield was a place where supreme being experts had fallen before. Ordinary saints were killed before they could even get close to the edge of the true ancient battlefield. Calling the Wonjun secret realm the ancient battlefield was actually somewhat inaccurate, because the ancient battlefield was only a part of the Wonjun secret realm. Right now, the saints of the sacred world were mostly active outside the edge of the true ancient battlefield. Wanting to enter the deepest part of the ancient battlefield? Most likely, only supreme being level experts will be able to enter. Brother, do you want to enter the Wonjun secret realm? Since we've met by chance, why don't we go together? The skinny young man looked at Murong-yu with an indescribable glint in the depths of his eyes. Someone at the 5th level of the undead realm actually took the initiative to invite someone at the 3rd level of the undead realm who was weaker than him. Murong-yu looked deeply at the young man, then nodded and turned back to look at the stone door. Behind the mottled stone door, there was a deep darkness. There was no light at all. It was like an ancient, ferocious beast had opened its bloody mouth, emitting a terrifying aura. This was the passage to the Wonjun secret realm. While Murong-yu was observing the stone door, tens of thousands of people had already charged into the endless darkness and been swallowed by the black hole. However, the black hole was just too terrifying. Cowards would be terrified at the sight of it. Who would dare to charge in? The laws of time and space. Murong-yu felt the power of time and space from the depths of the black hole, as well as an ancient aura that was different from the sacred world. It must be the aura of the ancient battlefield on the other side of the passage. Then let's go together, Murong-yu said indifferently, then stepped through the stone door without hesitation. His figure instantly disappeared into the endless darkness. The young man wouldn't invite Murong-yu for no reason. However, Murong-yu wasn't afraid. As the saying goes, the strong are bold. If the young man wanted to harm him, Murong-yu would kill him with a single punch, even if the other party didn't do anything to him. But as long as he was in the Wonjun secret realm, Murong-yu could easily shake him off. Rumble. A moment later, Murong-yu was ejected from the endless darkness by an inexplicable force. Before he even set foot on the ground, a wave of vicissitudes, tragic, and ancient aura that was like a stormy sea assaulted his face. It was exactly the same as the aura he felt from the stone door. However, it was more than 1,000 times stronger. This terrifying aura was the aura of the ancient battlefield. It filled the entire Wonjun secret realm. In the blink of an eye, Murong-yu was completely enveloped. Murong-yu took a deep breath. The energy in his body immediately surged like a torrent, rapidly surging through his body. In the next moment, he became accustomed to the aura of the Wonjun secret realm. The aura he felt now didn't affect him at all. In reality, the aura from where he was now didn't affect even great saints. However, the closer he got to the ancient battlefield, the stronger the aura became. And in the depths of the ancient battlefield, this aura could even kill a primal chaos ancestor saint. After stepping on solid ground, Murong-yu looked around. What entered his eyes was a large city. It was a city the size of the 9 holy kingdoms capital. There were human experts of all realms living inside. It was bustling with activity. This city is the base of our human race. It's exactly the same as the cities outside. So, we don't need to leave the Wonjun secret realm. We can replenish our supplies here. However, the things here are a bit more expensive than those outside, and the selling price is lower than outside. As Murong Yu looked at the city in front of him, a voice sounded in his ears. Murong Yu didn't need to look to know that the speaker was the thin youth who had followed him in. This kind of city isn't rare in the Wonjun secret realm. There are sacred clans, Yao clans, and so on. Every entrance and exit has a city like this. So, our human race's city only has us humans. So, we're safe in the city. However, once we leave the city, we have to be careful. We have to be careful of other humans and people of other races. In the Wonjun secret realm, robberies and assassinations happen every day. The thin youth explained to Murong Yu. Murong Yu nodded. This kind of thing couldn't be more normal. Who would dare to rob him? He just killed him with a punch. So, without saying a word, he rose into the air and flew forward. Chapter 1443. Because of Huarong's partial memories, Murong Yu also had a certain understanding of Wonjun's secret territory. However, he only understood the matters of the ancient battlefield in Wonjun's secret plane. He ignored the border areas and even the entrances. Therefore, when he saw the stone door and the human clan city in Wonjun's secret territory, he was surprised. Whether it was the human clan, the demon clan, or the sacred clan city, they were all at the border of Wonjun's secret territory, where the ancient battlefield's aura was the thinnest. It must be because it was convenient for more clansmen to enter Wonjun's secret territory to train. As long as he left Wonjun's secret territory and kept walking forward, he would enter the ancient battlefield. Therefore, Murong Yu had no intention of staying in the city. He immediately soared into the sky and quickly disappeared into the city. Hey, brother, don't you need to familiarize yourself with Wonjun's secret territory or replenish your supplies here? Seeing Murong Yu soar into the sky and fly away, the thin youth hurriedly called out. He hesitated for a moment, but in the end, he also rose into the air and flew forward. Replenish my supplies? Hearing this, Murong Yu only snorted coldly in his heart. To him, he didn't need any supplies at all. What most people meant by replenishing their supplies was just to replenish strength, heal injuries, detoxify, and so on. However, Murong Yu didn't need these pills at all. With the Tree of Life, Murong Yu's strength was almost endless. Moreover, his life force was incomparably strong. Not only could it heal physical injuries, but it also had no problem detoxifying, and so on. As for magic weapons and the like, Murong Yu even had a supreme weapon. Why would he need other magic weapons? Moreover, the things in this city were generally more expensive than outside. Murong Yu wasn't a fool who would give money to those profiteers. Like Murong Yu, many people turned into streams of light and flew out of the city, then disappeared in front of Wonjun's secret territory. Murong Yu and the thin youth weren't slow. Moreover, because Murong Yu didn't want to reveal his full strength for the time being, he slowed down. As a result, the thin youth was able to catch up. This was only Murong Yu's average speed. However, in the eyes of the skinny youth, it made him extremely shocked. He was 3 levels higher than Murong Yu, and his current speed was already close to his limit. However, Murong Yu looked like he was taking a stroll in the park. Brother, are you going to the ancient battlefield? Although the chances of gaining something in the primordial battlefield are higher, it is also extremely dangerous. The skinny youth caught up and asked Murong Yu. Murong Yu didn't say anything. He just nodded slightly. In fact, his spiritual will and consciousness had already spread out. He had 2 reasons for entering the Wonjun secret plane. One was to find the other parts of Tianmeng's body. The other reason was to find the place where the sovereign martial artist had fallen, which was the sovereign martial artist who had killed Huarong. However, Murong Yu's main goal was to find the other parts of Tianmeng's body. As for the place where the sovereign martial artist had fallen, He knew that it was deep in the ancient battlefield. With his current strength, it would be difficult for him to enter. The place where Murong Yu was heading to was the place where Guo Huanming had obtained Tian Meng's broken finger. However, as he got closer to the place, Murong Yu couldn't feel Tian Meng's aura at all. If the skinny youth wasn't beside him, Murong Yu would have taken out Tian Meng's broken hand and finger. They were originally a whole body, and they could sense each other. Plop, plop. At this moment, a few people who had been flying in front of Murong Yu and the skinny youth seemed to have lost their ability to fly. They directly fell from the sky and smashed a deep hole in the ground. Murong Yu frowned slightly. At this moment, a terrifying pressure descended from the sky like a vast ocean. It was as if millions of sacred mountains were pressing down on Murong Yu with a terrifying force. It wanted to smash Murong Yu to the ground. Aya! The skinny young man let out a cry of alarm. His entire body was like a meteor as he was directly suppressed by that incomparably terrifying force. Murong Yu's eyes flashed coldly. Just as he was about to explode with power to resist, his heart skipped a beat. Then, as if he had lost the ability to fly, his entire body was suppressed. With a loud boom, Murong Yu's entire body was smashed deep into the ground. Only his upper body was above the ground. However, Murong Yu's condition was considered good. The others, including the skinny youth, were all suppressed deep underground in an extremely wretched manner. Flying is prohibited. The skinny youth cried out in shock. Murong Yu turned his head and saw that the skinny youth's face had turned extremely pale. They had entered a prohibited zone. Such zones were common in the Wunjin secret plane and the Holy World. However, Murong Yu knew that there were no such zones near human cities. But they just had to encounter one. This was definitely deliberately set up by some powerhouses. These people could be from the monster race, or the holy race, or even some powerhouses from the human race. Murong Yu's face darkened, daring to set up a prohibited zone so close to a city and robbing passersby. They definitely aren't from the monster race or the holy race. Then the robbers can only be from the human race. Murong Yu's mind was sharp, and he figured out the reason in an instant. After all, this place was too close to a human city. Saints from other races wouldn't even dare to come close, let alone set up an ambush here. One had to know that in the Wunjin secret plane, conflicts and battles between different races were happening all the time. Every city forbade people from other races from approaching, let alone entering. Otherwise, they would be killed without mercy. One had to know that every city had a powerhouse from each race overseeing it. If other races dared to set up an ambush here, they would probably be killed by the human powerhouses in the city. As for the human powerhouses setting up an ambush here, if that was the case, then I'm sorry, but they would turn a blind eye to it. Because this was a world where the strong preyed on the weak. Being ambushed meant that you weren't strong enough. If you had the ability, then you could kill those people instead. This was the cruelty of the Holy Realm. Only with competition and pressure could there be improvement. Moreover, the cultivation world didn't need those weak trash. Their existence was just a waste of resources. Setting up an ambush here is really satisfying. We don't have to do anything but wait for prey to come to us. It's just that we only killed some low-level saints. We didn't get anything from before. Just as Murong Yu was lost in thought, a cold voice sounded out. You should be content. Who dares to enter the Wunjin secret plane doesn't have treasures on them. Even if it's just some low-level pills, saint weapons, and the like, many little drops make an ocean. It's definitely a terrifying amount of wealth. However, we've already set up an ambush here for many days this time. After we finish this job, we need to change positions. Otherwise, once we're discovered by the people behind them, we won't be able to bear the consequences. These people who had entered the ambush circle might not be strong, but some of them had extremely terrifying backgrounds. Once they were discovered, they would only have one end, death. While they were talking, two youths strode over from behind. These bastards. The thin and weak youth's face was somewhat pale, but he was even more angry. Hearing the thin and weak youth's words, the gazes of the two youths immediately tore, through the void and landed on the thin and weak youth. Two profound sages. At this time, Murong finally saw the realms of the two youths. However, his gaze went past these two profound sages and looked at the boundless space-time behind them. With the strength of these two profound sages alone, it was impossible for them to set up such a terrifying restriction that prohibited flying. In other words, there were two even more powerful powerhouses behind them. Or perhaps, the powerhouses who hadn't shown themselves were the real main force. And these two were nothing more than minions. Fish on the chopping board. Yet you still don't have any self-awareness. Damn it! The speed of the two youths was very fast, and it seemed that the power of the restriction Murong was in had no effect on them. They rushed over in just a few steps. One of the youths said with a sinister expression, and then ruthlessly stomped on the thin and weak youth's face with his big foot. Cooperate and cut off the mental power in your storage rings. Otherwise, we'll kill you without mercy. We just want money, the other youth said coldly as he glanced at Murong and the others. I'm so angry. Seeing the youth stomp on him, the thin and weak youth was inexplicably angry. He, who was originally suppressed on the ground and unable to move, suddenly stretched out his big hand and grabbed the youth's big foot. Seeing that the thin and weak youth still had the strength to move, the two youths couldn't help but cry out in surprise. However, that was all. The thin and weak youth was only at the 5th rank of the undead realm, while they were high-level profound sages. Killing an undead realm sage like him was as easy as turning over their hands. Boom! In a flash, the hands and feet of the two youths collided in midair, and an ear-shattering sound erupted. After a miserable scream, the youth's figure fiercely retreated. Murong looked over and saw that the youth's foot had been crushed by the thin and weak youth. If he hadn't reacted quickly and directly crushed his own foot, he was afraid that his whole body would have been crushed by the thin and weak youth. You actually dare to rob this young master? You're really tired of living. The thin and weak youth slapped the ground with one hand, and his whole body leaped into the air, turning into a stream of light as he rushed towards the retreating youth. Blue lightning claw. The thin and weak youth roared and stretched out his claw, grabbing at the youth in the air. Green lightning flashed, and arcs of lightning shot out from his claws, filling the sky in an instant. A terrifying pressure that could intimidate all the realms in the universe erupted. Arcs of lightning formed an incomparably huge net in the void, and it fiercely smashed down on the young, profound sage. Chapter 1444. Upon seeing this, the young, profound immortal coldly snorted. Then, holy light burst out from his body, and the endless power in his body poured into his hands like a torrent. Break for me! The young, profound immortal roared and punched the sky above his head. A terrifying power burst out, tearing the void apart. Die for me! The thin and weak youth coldly shouted as his big hand pressed down. Suddenly, the earth-shattering electric net shook in the air and burst out with an even more dazzling electric light, quickly covering the young, profound immortal. Boom! In a split second, the young, profound sage's fist had already fiercely crashed into the electric light. In that instant, Murong saw the net of lightning paused in the air for a brief moment before pressing down once again. The young, profound immortal's attack simply couldn't stop the electric net from falling. In just an instant, the young, profound sage was shrouded in the electric net. Chi-chi. When the electric net came into contact with the young, profound sage's body, arcs of electricity strangled the young, profound sage like snakes, intending to electrocute him to death. The young, profound sage was shocked, but he didn't panic. The power in his body surged, forming a silkworm-like shield on the surface of his body. At the same time, the power in his hands flowed, flickering with holy light and erupting with a terrifying aura that could destroy the world. He fiercely stretched out and grabbed the electric net in the air. Then, he pulled to both sides, intending to tear the electric net apart. Just as he grabbed the electric net and was about to tear it to pieces, the young, profound sage screamed miserably. At this moment, Morong Yu's pupils fiercely shrank. This was because he clearly saw that the electric light had merged with the young, profound sage's power and quickly spread to his body. In less than an instant, the young, profound sage's clothes were burned. After the endless power of thunder and lightning tore his clothes, it directly bombarded the young, profound sage's body. In the instant of contact, the young, profound immortal's body was charred black, just like charcoal. It even emitted a meaty fragrance. The young, profound sage screamed miserably and pulled with both hands, tearing the electric net to pieces. At the same time, his figure flickered and he retreated rapidly. During this process, the energy in his body surged like a stormy sea, constantly forcing out the lightning energy that had surged into his body. Although his physical body was electrocuted, he still let out a miserable cry. But in reality, it was not fatal to him. As long as he willed it, he would be able to restore his physical body. What was threatening to him was the power of lightning that had entered his body. The power of thunder and lightning was like a fish in water, following his strength and quickly surging into the meridians in his body. The young, profound sage was even more shocked to discover that the lightning had the ability to devour. Moreover, after devouring his power, the power of thunder and lightning rapidly grew. If this power was allowed to wreak havoc in his body, it wouldn't take long for the power of the young, profound sage to be completely devoured. At that time, he would be killed. Morong Yu narrowed his eyes and looked at the skinny young man in surprise. He had underestimated the skinny youth. This guy's power of thunder and lightning not only had the berserk power of ordinary thunder and lightning, but it also had the ability to devour. Moreover, it could kill people of a higher realm. If not for the young, profound sage being much stronger than the skinny young man, he would have already been killed. What was the origin of this guy? Morong Yu pondered, and a trace of doubt flashed in his heart. Thunder Dragon Strike. Seeing that he had injured the young, profound sage with one move, the skinny young man attacked again. Terrifying thunderbolts burst out from his hands, forming a thunderbolt that roared in the sky. The Thunder Dragon issued a shocking dragon roar, tore through the void, and rushed toward the young, profound sage. The young, profound sage was already in a bad situation. If he was bitten by the Thunder Dragon, even if he didn't die, he would be seriously injured. Therefore, he retreated once again. However, the young, profound sage was still a powerhouse of the profound sage realm, and he was much stronger than the skinny young man. Most importantly, the skinny young man was suppressed to the point that he could hardly move. Therefore, the young, profound sage was easily able to avoid the attack of the skinny young man. At the same time, the power in his body surged, and he quickly forced out the power of thunder and lightning that had rushed into his body. Although the power of thunder and lightning was terrifying, the skinny young man's realm was not high, so he was unable to seriously injure him. Very good. You actually injured me. The young man's power crazily washed over him, and he quickly repaired his body. Then, he used his power to transform into a set of clothes to cover his body. However, the power that he had consumed did not recover so quickly. At this time, he was glaring at the skinny young man with eyes full of anger, slowly approaching him. However, after a certain distance, he stopped in his tracks. Obviously, he was frightened by the power of thunder and lightning of the skinny young man. The skinny young man looked at the two profound sages fearlessly and coldly shouted, "Let us go, or you'll have to bear the consequences." "Okay, I'll let you go." The young, profound sage grinned and used his right hand as a sword, quickly slashing at the skinny young man. Chi! A sword light that emitted a terrifying aura appeared out of thin air, tore through the void, and quickly appeared near the skinny young man before slashing down. Child's play. The skinny young man sneered and waved his claw, grabbing at the incomparably sharp sword light. It was the blue lightning claw that had previously suppressed the young, profound sage. Boom! After an earth-shattering sound, the sword light and the power of thunder and lightning of the skinny young man both disappeared into the void. The remaining terrifying impact swept out like a tide, sending the nearby profound sages who had been suppressed flying. Only Murong Yu stood in place, motionless. Even the corners of his clothes did not move. No one present noticed Murong Yu's strange behavior. However, Murong Yu heard a very small cry of surprise coming from behind. There really is someone behind us. Murong Yu narrowed his eyes, but he did not move. He wanted to see how things would develop. Die! The young profound sage roared with murderous intent, and once again punched at the skinny young man. The skinny young man's face was gloomy. Although his body was suppressed to the point that he could hardly move, his power was still constantly erupting as he fought with the young profound sage. The two of them were fine for the time being, but the suppressed profound sages were in a tragic situation. They could not move, and they did not have the strength of the skinny young man and Murong Yu. Therefore, they were constantly hit by the shock waves of the battle between the skinny young man and the young profound sage. They were sent flying like sandbags, suffering unspeakable pain. The other young profound sage was coldly watching the battle between the two with his hands folded, as if he was not worried at all. Murong Yu was also watching the battle between the two. The skinny young man was undoubtedly powerful. If it were any other environment, he would definitely be able to kill the young profound sage. However, he was currently suppressed and could not use many of his methods. At most, he could only use 60 to 70% of his strength. Therefore, unless a miracle happened, the skinny young man would eventually be defeated. Moreover, the two of them were now competing to see who had more power. How much power did an imperishable realm expert have against a profound sage? The imperishable realm expert had no advantage. Sure enough, the skinny young man was also aware of this point, and soon became somewhat anxious. On the other hand, the young profound sage grinned again and again as he bombarded the skinny youth with one move after another, intending to kill him. Oomph! The skinny young man coldly snorted. In the next moment, an extremely terrifying aura erupted from his body. At the same time, a green stream of light shot out from between his eyebrows. In the blink of an eye, the green stream of light expanded against the wind, turning into a house-sized cover. The skinny young man shouted again and again, 5 Thunder God cover. Thunder kills the world. Suppress for me. He actually brought out a magical treasure to suppress. Although they were suppressed, it did not affect the attacks of their magical treasures. The 5 Thunder God cover was the size of a house, and its whole body flickered with green arcs of lightning. Waves of terrifying aura swept out in the sky, shaking the heavens and the earth like a tidal wave. At this moment, the saints who had been suppressed in the surroundings immediately felt an extremely terrifying aura of death appear in their hearts, causing their souls to tremble as well. A peerless sage artifact, and a peak one at that. Murong Yu's soul strength was very powerful, and the pressure emitted by the 5 Thunder God cover was not enough to suppress him. A peerless sage artifact. Seeing the 5 Thunder God cover, the two young men exclaimed. Immediately, incomparable greed appeared on their faces. It's actually a peerless sage artifact. This time, we've struck it rich. The two young men looked at each other and saw the greed on each other's faces. Then, the two of them reached out their hands at the same time and grabbed at the 5 Thunder God barrier. Two profound sages attacked. The skinny young man's face darkened, feeling that these profound sages were really shameless. However, although he was angry in his heart, he did not say a word. If speaking up was useful, he would not need to fight. Immediately, he gathered all of his strength and poured it into the house-sized 5 Thunder divine shield through the air. After receiving a large amount of power, the house-sized 5 Thunder God cover shook and suddenly turned into the size of a small mountain. With a terrifying aura that could shake the heavens and earth, it smashed through the void, locked onto the two profound sages, and fiercely suppressed them. Hey! The two young profound sages coldly snorted, and their two big hands simultaneously grabbed the 5 Thunder God cover. Explode for me, the young man roared, and Murong you saw the hill-sized five-thunder god cover fiercely shake in the void. Suddenly, arm-sized cyan lightning bolts burst out like a storm, annihilating the void and strangling the two profound sages. At the same time, the five-thunder god cover fiercely suppressed the two profound sages, intending to kill them. Chapter 1445. Chi. The boundless power of thunder and lightning poured down like an ocean, pouring down on his head and face. Before the two profound sages could react, it had already covered them. The power of thunder and lightning of the five lightning divine barrier came from the same source as that of the thin youth, and both had the ability to devour power. Once the two profound sages were covered, the power of thunder and lightning quickly devoured their power, erupting with an extremely violent aura that poured into their bodies. Moreover, the power of thunder and lightning of the five lightning divine barrier was several times stronger than that of the thin youths. In an instant, an extremely dangerous aura appeared in the hearts of the two profound sages. They both knew that the five lightning divine barrier was a great threat to them. At the same time, the mountain-sized five lightning divine barrier also came down with terrifying power. The expressions of the two profound sages kept changing, and their figures flickered as they retreated at the same time. Die for me. The thin youth roared as he controlled the five lightning divine barrier to fiercely suppress them. Get lost. The two profound sages shouted at the same time with gloomy expressions, and an incomparably violent power fiercely shot out, bombarding the five lightning divine barrier. Clang! After an earth-shattering sound, the five lightning divine barrier was sent flying, smashing the void and turning into a bolt of lightning. However, because of the bombardment of the five lightning divine barrier, the two profound sages could no longer resist the invasion of the power of thunder and lightning. The moment they made their move, the endless power of thunder and lightning poured into their bodies. It quickly devoured their power. The two profound sages were scared half to death, and their figures flickered as they retreated far away. At the same time, the power in their bodies raged like stormy waves, crazily strangling the power of thunder and lightning that was pouring into their bodies. However, the power of thunder and lightning was very violent. When a large amount of the power of thunder and lightning entered their bodies, they were shocked to see their bodies and meridians being continuously torn apart. Moreover, after devouring their power, the power of thunder and lightning became even more powerful. As a result, their bodies and meridians were being destroyed even more rapidly. While the two of them retreated, the skinny young man once again controlled the five lightning god shield to attack. Looking at the five lightning divine barrier that was rapidly descending, the hearts of the two profound sages were shrouded by a strong aura of death. At this moment, they no longer had any extra energy to block the five lightning god barrier's attack. Senior brother, save me. Between their lives and their dignity, the two profound sages chose their lives, and without any regard for their dignity, they loudly cried for help. Two pieces of trash. An angry and disdainful voice came from behind. Then, two beams of holy light appeared out of thin air, tore through the void, and landed on the two profound sages. Suddenly, the two profound sages saw the power of lightning that had entered their bodies being easily annihilated. At the same time as the two beams of holy light appeared, a large hand tore through the void and came at lightning speed, grabbing at the five thunder god dome. Humph! Seeing this, the skinny young man immediately shouted coldly and controlled the five thunder divine barrier to fiercely collide with the big hand that was grabbing towards him. You overestimate yourself. I'll help you keep this peerless sacred artifact safe. A cold voice rang out from behind. At the same time, the giant hand above the firmament grabbed downwards. Bang! After a dull sound, the five thunder divine barrier suddenly burst out with dazzling and terrifying lightning. At the same time, the sacred artifact violently shook, trying to break free and shatter the giant hand of power. "Suppress it for me," the cold voice said, and the giant hand of power shook in the air. In the next moment, the crazily shaking 5 Thunder Divine barrier immediately stopped. Even the lightning that had burst out from it was suppressed and retracted back into the 5 Thunder Divine barrier. Puff! The skinny young man immediately spat out a mouthful of blood. Whoosh! The giant hand of power grabbed the 5 Thunder Divine barrier and disappeared from Murong Yu's line of sight. This peerless sacred artifact had been snatched away by someone. An ancient sage. The one who had acted was an ancient sage. Murong Yu's eyes flickered, but he didn't say anything. The young man who had spat out a mouthful of blood had an angry look on his face. Terrifying killing intent erupted from his body, but there was nothing he could do. The difference in strength between the two sides was obvious, and he was suppressed by the formation, unable to resist at all. The most important thing was that the person who had acted was an ancient sage, who was 2 whole realms higher than him. The skinny young man was very powerful, and with the help of a peerless sacred artifact, he could even kill 2 profound sages. But in front of an ancient sage, he was nothing. Not everyone was as abnormal as Murong Yu, who could kill an enemy 2 whole realms higher than him. Kill them all. Perhaps because he had snatched a peerless sacred artifact, the ancient sage who had acted before no longer concealed himself and stepped out from behind. This was a young man with a sinister and treacherous face. His eyes were full of resentment, without any emotion. As he spoke, he had already taken the initiative to attack. Terrifying power erupted from his body, turning into countless swords and sabers. Carrying a terrifying pressure, they cut through the void and quickly slashed towards Murong Yu and the others. Except for Murong Yu, everyone's face was ashen. Even if there were geniuses among them, it could not change the fact that they were about to die. Perhaps some of them had powerful backgrounds, but under the suppression of the formation, they could not even speak, let alone reveal their identities. The skinny young man was so angry that he almost fainted. Murong Yu frowned slightly. It was normal to be killed because one was not strong enough to rob someone. Generally speaking, he did not want to care about this kind of thing. However, these people's mistake was that they should not have targeted him. Moreover, they should not have tried to kill Murong Yu. This was definitely the worst thing they had done in their lives. Enough! With a thought, Murong Yu's figure rose high, and then he took a step forward, standing on the ground like an ancient sacred mountain. At this time, where was the anger he had when he was suppressed? Confusion? Or even despair? At this time, Murong Yu had an indifferent smile on his face. His expression was cold, and his eyes flashed with a threatening, cold light. His voice was not loud, but it was like a thunderclap, causing everyone's eardrums to buzz. At the same time, Murong Yu made his move. He pointed his finger like a sword, and then a black sword light shot out from his fingertip. At first, the sword light was only the size of a little finger, but soon it grew to 5 feet and then 10 feet. When it grew to 10 feet, the incomparably huge sword light suddenly exploded. Then, it turned into thousands of sword lights, like thousands of arrows shot at the same time, tearing the void. It quickly strangled the power of the ancient sage and killed everyone. What's going on? Seeing Murong Yu suddenly stand up as if nothing had happened, the formation they were in had no effect on him. Everyone present, including the ancient sage, was shocked. Each and every one of them looked at Murong Yu in astonishment. As for the skinny youth, his face was filled with shock as he looked at Murong Yu. His eyes were filled with shock. Could it be that this array formation is useless? The people who were being suppressed were moved and wanted to get up, but soon they found that they were still unable to move. The suppression of the formation was still there, but it had no effect on Murong Yu. The ancient sages were also shocked, but seeing Murong Yu make his move, the ancient sage only sneered. He did not think that Murong Yu's attack would be effective. A third-level undead stage saint had shattered the attack of an ancient saint? What kind of joke was this? Was there such a perverted person in this world? Even if there was, he would not be so lucky to meet such a person, right? In reality, his luck was really that good. He had actually encountered such a freak and pervert. Chi. In a flash, the power of the two sides collided in the void. Then there was a burst of ear-piercing collision sounds. Then the ancient sage was shocked to see that the power he struck out was annihilated. Of course, Murongyu's power also disappeared in the void. The power of the two was about the same, but there was a gap of 2 major realms between them. Humph! Gu Sheng coldly snorted. He formed a sword with his right hand and slashed down at Murongyu. Although he was shocked, he felt that it was just a coincidence. Elephant pulling fist. A cold light flashed in Murongyu's eyes as he punched out. Bang! Without any suspense, the ancient sage's attack was directly shattered. On the other hand, Murongyu's body merely swayed slightly. A cold, killing intent flashed in the ancient sage's eyes. Kid, your strength is not bad, but you must die today. A vicious look flashed in the ancient sage's eyes. He had been robbing people for so long, and he had always killed without mercy. He would never let anyone leave and reveal the secret of his group. Boom! A loud explosion erupted from his body, and then the terrifying aura on his body suppressed in all directions like a sacred mountain. And the first to bear the brunt of it was Murongyu. The ancient sage took a step forward, and the ground shattered. At the same time, he roared, "Die!" As he roared, he continued to launch an attack. Chaotic mountain-crushing fist. The terrifying power formed a vast and enormous sacred mountain. It carried with it an aura that could destroy the heavens and extinguish the earth and intimidate all the experts throughout the ages. It shattered the obstruction between space and time and smashed towards Murongyu. Murongyu narrowed his eyes, and his battle intent surged like an ocean. The ancient sage had reached the 5th level, and a 5th-level ancient sage was enough to give Murongyu a certain amount of pressure. This was the opponent Murongyu needed. Boom! Murongyu stomped his foot on the ground, causing the earth to shake. At the same time, he borrowed the force of the stomp to soar into the sky, shattering the void as he transformed into a primordial bird and ferociously pounced forward. Chapter 1446. Primordial Mountain Collapsing Fist. With a punch, huge holy mountains gushed out, layer upon layer. The further the distance, the bigger the holy mountains, and the more terrifying the pressure they emitted. This was an extremely powerful combat skill. It wasn't even inferior to some of the combat skills that Murongyu had practiced before. Boom! In a split second, the attacks of the two fiercely collided in the void. After an earth-shaking explosion, the primordial mountain-collapsing fist that the ancient sage had unleashed was shattered by the terrifying power, turning into the most primitive power that merged with the world. Murongyu's body fiercely shook, and his whole body was sent flying. With one blow, the difference between the two was obvious. In the end, Murongyu's strength was inferior to that of a 5th-rank ancient sage. However, everyone who saw this scene was stunned. A 3rd-level imperishable realm cultivator clashed head-on with a 5th-level ancient sage, and he was only sent flying without sustaining any injuries. How terrifying was this person's strength? In particular, the eyes of the two profound sages were filled with fear. If he had made a move before, the two of us wouldn't have been able to block a single blow. The two profound sages looked at each other and saw the intense fear in each other's eyes. Gushun was also surprised. However, his surprise soon turned into intense, killing intent. "You're very strong, but you're still going to die today." Before speaking, he took a step forward and once again sent a punch towards Murongyu. Murongyu laughed, and the black holy light on his body soared into the sky, and a powerful fighting intent swept in all directions like a torrent. "I don't know if I will die or not, but you will die today." While speaking, Murongyu once again rushed forward. Dragon Elephant Prajna Art, Black Tortoise Scripture. The strength of a 5th-rank ancient sage was much higher than Murongyu's and posed a certain threat to him. However, it wouldn't be easy for him to kill Murongyu. And this kind of opponent was exactly what Murong Yu wanted to meet. After his strength increased, Murong Yu needed to familiarize himself with his combat skills and power. This was especially true for the various combat skills, which required a hardy battle to familiarize himself with. Terrifying shock waves burst out continuously, causing the void in the surrounding area to explode. It was extremely violent and terrifying. Holy light soared into the sky, illuminating the entire heaven and earth. Boom! Both of their strengths were extremely terrifying. The power they unleashed tore apart the heavens and split the earth. Suddenly, after a loud noise, the skinny young man and the others felt that the huge pressure on their bodies had suddenly disappeared. Everyone who discovered this was overjoyed. They immediately soared into the sky and flew into the distance. The formation suppressing them had actually been shattered by the shock waves from the battle between Murong Yu and Gu Sheng. The skinny young man and the others regained their freedom. "You two pieces of trash, give me your lives." After regaining his freedom, the thin and weak youth didn't immediately run away. Instead, he burst out with the power of thunder and lightning and rushed towards the two profound sages with a fiendish smile. The two profound sages glanced at each other and then rushed towards the skinny young man with fiendish smiles. Although the skinny young man was powerful, without the 5 lightning divine cover, how could he deal with the two profound sages? In an instant, the 3 of them started fighting. However, the power of thunder and lightning on the skinny young man's body was too terrifying. Although he wasn't a match for the two profound sages and was at a disadvantage. Even so, the two profound sages couldn't do anything to the skinny young man in a short time. "These bastards actually dared to rob us. Kill them." At this moment, a roar was heard. Then, a magical treasure exuding a powerful aura descended from the sky, ruthlessly suppressing one of the two profound sages. "Right, everyone, let's join forces and kill him." The other Undead Realm sage also roared and joined the battle, courting death. Although some of these Undead Realm sages were a few small realms higher than the skinny young man, their strength wasn't as abnormal as the skinny young man's. They simply weren't a match for the two profound sages. Therefore, seeing them attack, the two profound sages just snorted disdainfully. They casually slapped out with their palms, wanting to kill them. However, the skinny young man managed to block both of their attacks in an instant. This made it impossible for them to attack the other Undead Realm sages. Although the Undead Realm sages couldn't kill the two profound sages, that was still the case. That was under the premise that they fought back. They were not strong enough to stand there and let the undead saints kill them. Moreover, as more and more Undead Realm sages joined in, the pressure on the two profound sages increased. In the end, they were even suppressed by the skinny young man and the others. These sages were all furious. Whatever move was more ruthless, they would use it. It didn't take long for the two profound sages to encounter danger again and again, their faces turning green. On the other side, the battle between Murong Yu and the ancient sage had reached its climax. At the beginning, Murong Yu was suppressed, but now the two were neck and neck. This was because Murong Yu was gradually familiarizing himself with his new power. He was also becoming more skilled in using various combat skills. As a result, his combat strength naturally began to soar. However, the combat strength of the 5th rank ancient sage didn't increase. Seeing Murong Yu getting stronger and stronger, the 5th rank ancient sage became more and more shocked. However, what made him feel even more frightened was that Murong Yu didn't seem to have consumed any of his strength. After fighting for a long time, he was still full of energy and vigor. As for him, more than half of his strength had been consumed. Every time he used various secret techniques and combat skills, he needed a huge amount of strength as a foundation. Even if he didn't use any combat skills, just a casual punch would consume a lot of his strength. Otherwise, how could he kill the enemy? If we continue fighting like this, even if he can't kill me, he can definitely exhaust me to death. Once my strength is exhausted, I won't be his opponent at all. I didn't expect to meet such a monster this time. The ancient sage thought to himself, his face becoming more and more ashen. Not everyone dared to intercept the large formation he had arranged. He generally only intercepted sages below the profound sage realm. Sages of the ancient sage realm were rarely intercepted. Today's situation was what he was worried about. Therefore, when he was ambushing, he wouldn't activate the formation if he found that the strength of the people passing by was relatively high. Today, when he saw that Murong Yu's group didn't exceed the profound sage realm, he decisively took action. However, he didn't expect to kick an iron plate. The thin and weak youth was fine. Although he was monstrous, he didn't take him seriously. However, Murong Yu, he felt a strong aura of danger from Murong Yu's body. Murong Yu had the ability to kill him. After fighting for so long, he hasn't even used his sacred tool or magical treasure. If he does, I won't be his opponent, the ancient sage thought to himself. He didn't believe that Murong Yu didn't have a powerful sacred tool or magical treasure. In that case, I'll run. Thinking of this, he made a feint. Then, his figure flickered, and he took a step forward, rushing 1,000,000 kilometers away. With another step, he disappeared thousands of kilometers away. He abandoned the two profound sages and directly ran away. He did this kind of thing all day long and had no dignity to speak of. Moreover, between his life and dignity, he would definitely not choose dignity. Where do you think you're going? Seeing the ancient sage running away, Murong Yu just sneered. Then, with a bang, 2 pairs of black wings appeared on his back. Black light lingered, and an ancient and vigorous aura was emitted from the black wings, shaking the heavens and the earth. Boom! The 2 pairs of black wings gently flapped, and the nearby void was directly shattered. However, Murong Yu had already disappeared from where he stood. Whoosh! When Murong Yu reappeared, he was already beside the ancient sage. At the same time, he stretched out a claw and grabbed at the 5th rank ancient sage. Chaos Mountain Collapsing Fist. The 5th rank ancient sage was shocked by Murong Yu's terrifying speed, but his reaction wasn't slow. With a roar, he punched out hundreds of millions of sacred mountains, fiercely attacking Murong Yu. However, he didn't stop at all and continued to shoot forward. Murong Yu's punch destroyed the ancient sage's attack, but his figure was shaken and forced to take a few steps back, and a large area of the void was crushed by his footsteps. With just this delay, the 5th rank ancient sage had already opened up a large distance and quickly flew toward the human city. This guy obviously wanted to escape into the city, because killing for revenge was strictly prohibited in the city. Murong Yu definitely wouldn't dare to make a move in the city. Murong Yu was clever, so how could he not know the ancient sage's intentions? Flapping his demonic wings, he chased after him again. I said that you would die today, so you can't continue to live. Don't think that I can't kill you. Murong Yu sneered. The 5th rank ancient sage sneered. With his speed, it wouldn't take long for him to return to the city. During this process, he could still block Murong Yu's attack. However, before he could finish his sneer, his heart was suddenly enveloped by an intense aura of death. What's going on? The 5th rank ancient sage was shocked. Before he could react, his soul suddenly trembled violently, and an intense fear instantly seeped out of his soul and spread throughout his body. Boom! At the same time, a terrifying force appeared in his soul space. Soul attack. You're also a soul sage. The ancient sage finally reacted and shouted. His face instantly turned pale, and a look of horror flashed across his eyes. You guessed right. Murong Yu smiled faintly, and his soul power ruthlessly slashed at the ancient sage's soul. Puff! Without any strength to fight back, the ancient sage's soul was directly shattered and annihilated. A 5th rank ancient sage was killed. Murong Yu's expression was cold as he took the ancient sage's storage ring. Then, he took out a flame of primal chaos and burned the ancient sage's corpse to ashes. With Murong Yu's current strength, just the power of his cultivation alone could suppress a 5th rank ancient sage. If he supplemented it with the power of time, space, and soul attack, The fifth-rank ancient sage would be no match for him. Chapter 1447. Conspiracy. Once this thought appeared, Murong could no longer suppress it. This thought grew stronger and stronger. The more this was the case, the more anxious Murong was, and the more he wanted to rescue them. However, Murong knew very well that since his senior brothers were asking for help, even though they were only in the chaotic ancestor saint realm, he would be courting death if he went. He had to break through to the next realm in the shortest time possible. Murong gritted his teeth. To him, the stronger he was, the greater his ability to survive. If he couldn't even protect himself, how could he save them? Once I break through to a higher realm, my strength will skyrocket. Coupled with Hichu, Luoshu, and other treasures, I might be able to save them. I hope they can hold on a little longer, Murong thought to himself. Then, he forcibly suppressed the restlessness in his heart and continued to cultivate. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. During this process, one after another, distressed talismans broke through the air and flew towards them. In less than half a day, 10 of the 17 senior brothers of the Infernal Society had already sent out talismans for help. Then, there was no more then. He didn't know if all of them were in danger or had been rescued by the remaining people. Murong grew more anxious, but at the same time, he became calmer. Devour the power of thunder and lightning to break through to the next realm. Under the immense pressure of danger, Murong fell into a frenzy of cultivation. On this day, break through to the next realm. Murong, who was in the midst of cultivation, suddenly opened his eyes and let out a roar. As he roared, his body began to tremble violently. Then, circles of violent electric arcs erupted from his body and swept in all directions. During this process, an aura that was more and more powerful than before quickly spread out like a tide, rushing in all directions. Boom! After an earth-shattering sound, Murong's body suddenly erupted with a mass of black holy light. Wherever the holy light passed, the thunder and lightning outside were forcefully shaken away. An aura that was 10 times stronger than before burst out. Boom! Boom! Murong's body was constantly emitting sounds that sounded like beans being fried. Inside Murong's body, every inch of his bones, flesh, blood, and even meridians were being destroyed and reconstructed. The new bones, flesh, and even meridians were much stronger than before. A torrent of power washed through his body. Every time he was cleansed, his physical body would become a little stronger. A high-grade saint artifact, fleshly body. He had finally broken through. Murong was overjoyed and immediately let out a long howl. He sensed that his physical body was at least 10 times stronger than before the breakthrough. The pressure he was under was at least 10 times greater than before. Previously, Murong's physical body could be easily shattered by the power of thunder and lightning. However, Murong couldn't even feel the power of these thunderbolts. It was like scratching an itch. What a powerful physical body. Even if it's just my physical body, I can still smash a high-level profound sage to death. Feeling the power of his physical body, Murong was overjoyed and let out a long howl. With the strength of his physical body and his cultivation, Murong was confident that he could kill high-level ancient sages. However, he still didn't have the ability to kill a peak ancient sage. If he encountered an ancient sage, Murong wouldn't be able to defeat him, but his ability to save his life had increased a lot. Now I can go and save people. Murong frowned slightly. Just as he was about to leave the small lightning world, he suddenly thought of something. After the breakthrough of my physical body, my endurance has increased. I might as well take this opportunity to improve my cultivation again. While thinking, Murong took a step forward and rushed into the depths of the small lightning world. Devour all the power of thunder and lightning. When Murong entered the depths of the small lightning world and reached the limit of his physical body's endurance, he stopped. He let out a roar, and a violent suction force burst out. In an instant, All the lightning energy in Murong Yu's surroundings was devoured and poured into Murong Yu's body. Rumble. The violent power of thunder and lightning rushed into Murong Yu's body like raging waves. It passed through his meridians and rushed into his lightning saint godhead. Although his physical body had broken through to the high-grade saint artifact level, the power of thunder and lightning he was absorbing was extremely violent. Bang! 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 Muffled sounds came from Murong Yu's body. One after another, his physical body and meridians exploded under the bombardment of thunder and lightning. This was not the most terrifying thing. The most terrifying thing was that after the thunder and lightning rushed into Murong Yu's Saint Godhead, it seemed like his Saint Godhead could not withstand the violent power of the thunder and lightning, and invisible cracks appeared on it. Murong Yu was shocked, and he quickly slowed down his absorption of the thunder and lightning. At the same time, life force surged out from his dantian like an ocean, rapidly repairing his damaged physical body, meridians, and even his saint godhead. I can't go on like this. Murong Yu slowed down his absorption of the thunder and lightning, but he did not stop and continued to devour the thunder and lightning. But in his heart, he was pondering, I wonder if the chaos furnace can refine the power of thunder and lightning. Murong Yu suddenly thought of the chaos furnace. Although the chaos furnace was said to be able to refine anything, it was only a physical object. Compared to this kind of pure power, he had never tried it. You know what he said? Murong Yu's heart moved, and he guided a portion of the thunder and lightning into the chaos furnace. Chaos furnace, refine for me. Murong Yu roared. The primal chaos furnace lightly trembled, and the incomparably violent lightning energy disappeared. At the next moment, an incomparably pure power was emitted from the chaos furnace and poured into his body through space. Yes, Murong Yu was overjoyed. Moreover, Murong Yu also discovered that the increase in strength after being refined by the chaos furnace was many times better than directly absorbing the thunder and lightning. Because directly absorbing the thunder and lightning would only increase the power of the lightning saint godhead. Moreover, the lightning couldn't be directly converted into energy. The lightning saint godhead still needed to refine the lightning energy before it could be converted into Murong Yu's energy. But after being refined by the chaos furnace, the power could directly increase Murong Yu's strength and even his cultivation. It's a pity that the chaos furnace can't leave my body. Otherwise, I could directly refine the violent thunder and lightning. Murong Yu pondered in his heart, and at the same time, he began to refine the thunder and lightning even more crazily. Rumble. Not long after Murong Yu's physical body broke through to high-grade Saint Artifact, his cultivation realm also broke through. After an earth-shattering explosion, his cultivation realm broke through again, reaching the 6th Order imperishable realm. After breaking through, Murong Yu's figure flickered, and he disappeared from the spot with a single step. When he reappeared, he was already in the depths of the lightning world. This was a place that only high-level ancestor saints dared to set foot in. But Murong Yu was not afraid at all, and he began to cultivate here, while refining the thunder and lightning energy to increase his cultivation. Murong Yu also began to strengthen his physical body. The thunder and lightning energy was indeed violent, and in less than half a day, Murong Yu's cultivation realm broke through again, reaching the 7th Order imperishable realm. At this point, Murong Yu could be considered a high-level imperishable realm expert. With his strength, he could even kill high-tier ancient sages. If combined with the power of the soul, the power of time, and other supernatural powers, he might be able to fight against a First Order Holy King. However, when Murong Yu broke through to the 7th Order imperishable realm, he had a feeling in his heart. The higher the cultivation realm, the more terrifying the power needed. He felt that if he wanted to break through to the 8th Order imperishable realm, it would be impossible here. He had to go deeper. However, his physical body could not withstand the deeper regions. He had to spend a long time to slowly get closer. But what Murong Yu lacked the most now was time. Well, I've gained a lot to be able to reach this stage. Since that's the case, I'll go and take a look at senior brother first. Murong Yu's eyes flashed, and he took a step forward, disappearing from the spot. Thunder, I have something urgent to do, so I'll leave first. When he passed by Thunder, Murong Yu transmitted his voice to him. At this time, Thunder had already gone deep into the lightning world, and his cultivation realm had broken through to the 6th order imperishable realm. Thunder only had time to open his eyes, and Murong Yu had already turned into a stream of light and disappeared from his sight. But he still caught Murong Yu's cultivation realm aura. 7th order imperishable realm? Thunder could not help but be shocked when he felt that Murong Yu's aura was even stronger than his. He clearly knew that before entering the lightning world, Murong Yu was only at the 3rd order imperishable realm. Thunder was originally proud to have broken through a small realm in such a short time, although he had already reached the peak of the 5th order imperishable realm. But to break through a small realm in a few days, one could not do it unless one was a genius. But when he saw that Murong Yu had broken through 4 small realms in a row, he was speechless. He was greatly shocked. What was a genius? This was a genius. If Thunder knew that Murong Yu had not only broken through 4 small realms, but his body had also been upgraded from a medium-grade sacred tool to a high-grade sacred tool, would he be so shocked that he would cry? Forget it, that guy's a freak, and I'm just a normal person. I can't compare with him. I can't compare with him. Thunder comforted himself in his heart, and then he calmed down and continued to cultivate. On the other side, after Murong Yu rushed out of the lightning world, he took out the 10 captives that he had received for help. These help talismans not only contain the consciousness and divine thoughts of the captives, but also their approximate location. Therefore, Murong Yu quickly confirmed the location of Huyin Inghao and the others, and used his fastest speed to travel through the void and shoot over. Chapter 1448. In the depths of Wenjun's secret territory, the Myriad Demons Valley. The Myriad Demons Valley was vast and boundless. It was one of the forbidden areas in Wenjun's secret territory. It was usually a place where all kinds of powerhouses searched for treasures. In addition to treasures and all kinds of natural treasures, there were even more powerful ferocious beasts. In fact, the reason the Myriad Demons Valley was a forbidden area was because of these powerful ferocious beasts. Ferocious beasts of the primal chaos ancestor realm were everywhere. Legend had it that there were even ferocious beasts of the primal chaos ancestor realm in the depths of the Myriad Demons Valley. Therefore, those who could enter and leave this place were usually powerhouses of the primal chaos ancestor realm. In the deepest part of the Myriad Demons Valley, even the average primal chaos ancestor realm did not dare to take half a step into the lightning pool. At this time, near the edge of the Myriad Demons Valley, on an empty ground, a dozen figures were lying on the ground. They were either leaning against a huge rock next to them or sitting cross-legged. Their clothes were ragged, and their bodies were stained with blood. At the same time, their auras were unstable. Obviously, they were all injured, and they were all seriously injured. However, not far from them, there were a few lifeless corpses lying on the ground. Obviously, these people were killed by them. If Murong Yu was here, he would definitely be shocked, because these injured people were none other than his fellow disciples of the Infernal Society. 16 people. Including Murong Yu, the Infernal Society had a total of 18 disciples. However, there were 16 people here. In other words, besides Murong Yu, there was only one person who was not here. The disciples of the Infernal Society were all killed in one fell swoop. Fellow disciples, I'm really sorry. I've caused all of you trouble. Huyin Inghao was lying on the ground. His body was covered in shocking wounds and stained with blood. His aura was very unstable and chaotic. At this time, he said with a face full of guilt, "In the beginning, only Huyin Inghao was besieged. However, within Inghao's strength, even if he was besieged by many powerhouses, it would not be a problem for him to escape. However, he was trapped in a large formation. flying was forbidden, cultivation was suppressed. In other words, in this large formation, they did not have the ability to fly, cultivation, or strength. They only had the strength of their physical bodies. Although Huyin Inghao's physical body was strong, he couldn't fight against so many people. In the end, he was seriously injured by the bombardment. At that time, Huyin Inghao had no choice but to ask for help. Therefore, he stubbornly resisted, all the way until Lu Xiankai and Wu Xinshui charged over. With the strength of the three of them, even if they were in the formation, they could still kill the enemy. However, when Lu Xiankai and Wu Xinshui arrived, a few more people appeared. Thus, the three of them were suppressed. Of course, with their strength, even though they were suppressed, it was still extremely difficult to kill them. Moreover, the other party didn't seem to want to kill them. They just kept on injuring them, but didn't kill them. Otherwise, with their strength, Huyin Inghao and the others would have likely already been killed. Soon after, all the Seamless Society members who had received the Distress Talisman rushed over. However, the result was the same. When they stepped into the formation, they were quickly attacked by the other party. It was true that the Infernal Society's members were strong, but each time they came, they would only send one person. How could they withstand the enemy's numbers? As soon as they entered the formation, they were suppressed, and all of them were seriously injured. However, the other party still didn't kill them. This was a conspiracy. They wanted to lure all the Seamless Society members over and finally catch them all in one fell swoop, killing all the Seamless Society members. The Seamless Society members weren't stupid, and they quickly reacted. However, by the time they reacted, it was already too late. This was because many of them had received the Distress Talisman at the beginning. At that time, they had already rushed over. Later on, when they reacted, they sent out some of the talismans to tell others not to come over, but they were intercepted by the other party and finally collapsed. In the end, the Seamless Society members came over one by one, but they were all suppressed. At that moment, apart from eldest senior brother Zhong Mingji and Murongyu, the rest of the 16 people were all suppressed. At that moment, they were suppressed in one of the valleys in the Myriad Demons Valley. After gathering Huyin Inghao and the others here, the other party didn't pay any attention to them. They allowed them to recuperate here. In any case, this place was enveloped by the formation. So what if they recovered their physical bodies? They couldn't use their strength, sacred artifacts, or magical artifacts. They only had the strength of their physical bodies. They really weren't afraid of a mere dozen people. We're from the same sect, so we're fellow disciples. Whether it's you or the others, we'll save them. 8th junior brother, this isn't your fault. 2nd senior brother Pan Yangxia said indifferently, but at the same time, his eyes flashed with cold, killing intent. Of course, his killing intent wasn't directed at Huyin Inghao or the others, but at the people who had plotted against them. That's right. We brothers should help each other. However, this time, I'm afraid our Seamless Society will be wiped out in one fell swoop. 4th senior brother Yang Xiao said somewhat gloomily, even if we're all killed, we still have eldest senior brother and youngest junior brother. I just hope eldest senior brother isn't in the One Zhen's secret realm. Lu Xiankai said helplessly. As for Murongyu, they never thought that he would be in the One Zhen's secret realm. With Murongyu's strength, even if he was in the One Zhen's secret realm, he wouldn't have the ability to go deep into the Myriad Demons Valley. Therefore, no one was worried about him. They were worried about eldest senior brother. It's been a few days, but eldest senior brother hasn't come. He shouldn't be in the One Zhen's secret realm. 6th disciple Bei Yongchang said, I'm afraid those bastards won't let us go. Looking at their actions, they probably want to wipe out our Seamless Society in one fell swoop. Those bastards from the Sacred Clan, if they were outside, I would have torn them apart. Huyin Inghao said angrily. This was all because of him. If he hadn't sent out the help talisman, the others wouldn't have come here at all. In the end, they were all suppressed. This made him feel quite depressed and guilty. 8th junior brother, you don't need to feel guilty. They wanted to suppress our Seamless Society. Even if you hadn't sent out the help talisman, they would have found a way to lure us into their trap. Fourth disciple Yu Yangjia said in a deep voice. The others nodded. Hu Yinninghao was silent. He also knew that things would turn out like this, but he still felt a little guilty. All right, don't think about it. Our Seamless Society's disciples aren't that easy to kill. Even if we die, we'll drag them down with us. Ying Gaohan's voice was cold and murderous. If the Sacred Clan hadn't set up this great array in advance and suppressed their power, they wouldn't have ended up like this. On the other side, outside the Great Array, in another valley belonging to the Myriad Devil Valley, more than 10 terrifying auras soared into the sky, straight into the 9 heavens. At the same time, waves of terrifying auras swept out in all directions like a tide, shaking heaven and earth. The terrifying auras even suppressed the powerful beasts in the Myriad Devil Valley, not daring to come close. One could imagine how terrifying these people were. All of them were primal chaos ancestor sages. If these people went out of the sacred world, they would be able to do whatever they wanted. They were all ancestor-level existences in the sacred world. 16 of the Seamless Society's 17 disciples. I think it's time to draw on the net, right? As long as we kill these people, the Seamless Society won't be a problem. When the time comes, we'll go to one of the 10 great sacred lands. I'm afraid that a long night will bring more trouble. The remaining disciple is nothing to worry about. No matter how strong he is, he can't be at the supreme stage. Once the Seamless Society's Down Master finds out, our efforts will be in vain. Another primal chaos ancestor sage frowned. A handsome young man who emitted a terrifying aura and had the aura of a leader frowned slightly. With the remaining disciple, the Seamless Society won't be a threat. Since that's the case, let's draw in the net and eliminate the Seamless Society. The young leader smiled coldly. He originally wanted to wipe out the entire Seamless Society in one fell swoop, but the eldest disciple of the Seamless Society hadn't appeared. Moreover, although he knew that the Seamless Society's Down Master was fighting outside, if he swept a thought back and discovered this matter, their efforts would really be in vain. Hee, kill these human experts. Hee, a sacred land only has a dozen people. As long as we kill them, the Seamless Society will be destroyed. If it were any other sacred land, killing a dozen of them wouldn't have any effect. I feel inexplicably excited just thinking about how we've destroyed a sacred land of the human race. A primal chaos ancestor sage rubbed his fists and slowly walked towards the group of Seamless Society cultivators. They had killed people before, even primal chaos ancestor sages. But those people were ordinary people. How could they feel as accomplished as destroying a sacred land? If they could destroy the Seamless Society, they would be the heroes of the sacred race. Boom! At this moment, outside the Myriad Demons Valley, a figure fell from the sky like a meteor. After a loud bang, a mountain was directly crushed by this person. The terrifying power even caused the earth to tremble. The heavens and the earth were shaking, and the momentum was extremely great. Could it be that the remaining disciple of the Seamless Society has arrived? Just nice, we can kill them all in one fell swoop. The sacred race experts were shocked at first, then became excited one by one. At the same time, their vast torrent of divine consciousness tore through the void and extended outside the Myriad Demons Valley. What's going on? An undead stage saint? When they saw the young man outside the Myriad Demons Valley, everyone couldn't help but be stunned. Don't worry about him. Don't complicate things. Kill those Seamless Society cultivators first. This guy isn't a threat, the young leader said indifferently, then took a step forward and disappeared on the spot. Myriad Demons Valley? Senior brother and the others are all suppressed in the Myriad Demons Valley? Muronyu raised his head and looked at the Myriad Demons Valley, where countless terrifying auras soared into the sky. His expression changed slightly. The young man who fell like a meteor was Muronyu. Chapter 1449. Whoosh! Murong-yu took a step forward, crossing countless space-time with a single step. Following the aura of Huyin Inghao and the others, he rushed straight into the Myriad Demons Valley. Boom! The moment Murong-yu appeared in the Myriad Demons Valley, an inexplicable force rolled in from all directions, instantly suppressing his body. Before Murong-yu could react, his entire body fell from the sky like a meteorite. After a loud bang, he was thrown to the ground, and a huge force shook him from the bottom of his feet. Instantly, the surrounding ground was shattered into pieces. What's going on? Murong-yu was slightly shocked. With a thought, he was about to soar into the sky again. However, his expression changed slightly the next moment. He could not fly. In addition to being unable to fly, he also realized that the power that was flowing in his meridians like a torrent suddenly stopped. The power was still there, but it was as if it was frozen and could not move at all. No matter how Murong-yu tried to move it, it could not move. It was as if his power no longer belonged to him. Forbidden to fly and confined power. Murong-yu immediately reacted. He was shocked at first, and then a look of joy appeared on his face. It was obvious that he had fallen into someone else's trap. However, it was different from the great formation that he had fallen into when he first arrived. At that time, although the Great Formation also prohibited flying and suppressed power, it only prohibited flying. At that time, the Great Formation was quite powerful for others, but it did not have much effect on Murong-yu. As long as Murong-yu wanted to, he could still fly. In fact, in the end, he even destroyed the Grand Formation. However, he could not destroy the Great Formation now, and even his power was suppressed. He could not fly or use his power at all. Senior brother and the others must have been in danger because of this. Even if they are supremes, as long as their power is suppressed, if their physical body is not strong enough, they are still trash. Murong-yu muttered to himself. He already had a rough idea of what had happened. However, it may be a disadvantageous situation for others, but for me, Murong-yu sneered in his heart. Under such circumstances, whoever had the strongest physical body would be the truth. With Murong-yu's fleshly body that had reached the level of a high-grade sacred artifact, he had never been afraid of anyone. In reality, with the toughness of his body, Murong-yu could definitely be regarded as an expert, even though he did not dare to say that he could do as he pleased in the Saints' world. Originally, he did not have much confidence in saving Huyin Inghao and the others. But now, Murong-yu was full of confidence. Therefore, he followed the aura of Huyin Inghao and the others through their talismans and quickly walked towards them. It's that kid. Not far from Murong-yu, the Sacred Race group quickly discovered Murong-yu. However, in the Grand Array, they did not receive any special treatment and were also suppressed by the power of the Grand Array. He's walking towards the Infernal Society, a primal chaos ancestral saint said with a slight frown. He's just an undead stage saint. We'll just kill him as well, the leading youth said indifferently as a cold, killing intent flashed through his eyes. Undead stage saints were nothing in his eyes, not even ancestral saints. This was also the reason why he hadn't killed Murong-yu earlier. However, when he saw Murong-yu now, he did not know why, but he felt that something was wrong. However, he quickly dismissed this feeling. What threat could an undead stage saint pose to him? Moreover, this place was already enveloped by the Grand Array. Not to mention an undead saint. Even a supreme being expert would be suppressed if they came here. Immediately, the two of them rushed in the direction of Huyin Inghao and the others. Soon, the valley where Huyin Inghao and the others were in appeared in front of Murong-yu and the Sacred Race group. 16 people. Murong-yu could not help but be shocked when he saw his 16 senior brothers and sisters who were all seriously injured. If they were all killed, then the seamless society would basically be wiped out. Thank goodness I came in time, Murong-yu exclaimed in his heart, but at the same time, his eyes flashed with a terrifying killing intent as he looked at the Sacred Race group, who were quickly approaching from the other side. It's these bastards. Murong-yu gritted his teeth, his cold killing intent spilling out undisguised, tearing the sky and earth apart, sweeping in all directions like a violent storm. It's junior brother. What's he doing here? When Murong Yu saw Hu Yininghao and the others, Hu Yininghao and the others also noticed Murong Yu's presence. They were stunned and puzzled at first. However, very soon, Hu Yininghao was the first to see Murong Yu and also the first to react. Junior brother, hurry up and leave this place. Run as far as you can and never come back. Thus, he let out a furious roar. Hurry up and leave this place. After Hu Yininghao, the others also quickly reacted. Immediately, they all anxiously urged Murong Yu to leave this place as soon as possible. Junior brother, could he be a new disciple of the Infernal Society? Hearing Hu Yininghao and the others' anxious shouts, the Sacred Race group was stunned for a moment, then smiled one by one. The information they received was that the Infernal Society only had 17 disciples, and they all knew who they were. However, they did not have any information about Murong Yu. If Murong Yu had not taken the initiative to appear, they would not have known that the Infernal Society had a junior brother like him. Just nice, we can catch them all in one fell swoop, the Sacred Race leader sneered, looking at Murong Yu with a cold, killing intent in his eyes. Leave this place. Hearing Hu Yininghao and the others' shouts, Murong Yu's heart flashed with a touch of emotion. Although these senior brothers and senior sisters did not spend much time with him, they were sincerely concerned about him. They were not willing to let him die here, so they were willing to let Murong Yu die. Rather than die here, it was better to go back and wait until he had the strength to come back for revenge. However, they did not know that Murong Yu's purpose was to save them. They did not know the strength of Murong Yu's physical body. In fact, they knew that Murong Yu's physical body was strong, but it was only at the level of a middle-grade sacred tool. However, as the saying goes, a hero cannot withstand a crowd. So what if Murong Yu's physical body reached the level of a middle-grade sacred tool? Could he be a match for the Sacred Race? Those people had the advantage in numbers. Don't let him escape. The young man in the lead only glanced at Murong Yu before indifferently saying. His attention was not on Murong Yu at all. Therefore, several primal chaos ancestral saints grinned maliciously and quickly walked towards Murong Yu. Murong Yu pretended not to see them and continued to walk towards Hu Yininghao and the others. Soon, he appeared in the small valley and arrived in front of Hu Yininghao and the others. The Sacred Race did not stop him. Wouldn't it be better for Murong Yu and the others to gather together? They could catch them all in one fell swoop. Little junior brother, why didn't you listen? Hu Yininghao could not help but glare at Murong Yu when he saw him walking over. His voice was filled with anger and anger. Asterisk cough cough. Asterisk, however, before he could finish his sentence, he began to cough because of his injuries. Mouthfuls of blood were coughed out by him. One could imagine how serious his injuries were. When Hu Yininghao questioned Murong Yu, the others also looked at Murong Yu with fire in their eyes. They were incomparably angry. Murong Yu was not angry. He was only touched. He knew that his senior brothers and sisters did not want him to die here. However, if they did not want him to die, how could he be willing to see them die? Murong Yu felt a warm current in his heart. Senior brothers and sisters, I'm here to save you. Not only am I going to save you, but I'm also going to kill all these bastards who ambushed you. Murderous intent surged. Endless murderous intent erupted from his body, tearing the sky and splitting the earth. It rushed straight to the 9th layer of heaven. Ha ha! The ones laughing were not Hu Yininghao and the other Sacred Race disciples, but the Sacred Race people. An imperishable realm cultivator wanted to save Hu Yininghao and the others, and even kill them all. They had seen arrogant and ignorant people before, but they had never seen someone so arrogant and ignorant. Hu Yininghao and the others were speechless and helpless. Little junior brother, we've received your kind intentions. However, you have to leave this place immediately. Although everyone was touched, no one wanted Murong Yu to die with them. Don't worry, I'll kill all these scoundrels. How dare they touch our Sacred Race people? They're simply courting death. Murong Yu sneered. He suddenly turned around and looked coldly at the sacred race people. I'll give you two choices. Submit to me or die. Murong glanced at the sacred race people and then fixed his gaze on the face of the young man in the lead. The young man's face flushed red and his breathing quickened. It was obvious that he was disgusted by Murong. You two go and kill him. The young man in the lead pointed at the two primal chaos ancestral saints beside him and said in a sinister voice. The two primal chaos ancestral saints nodded slightly. They stomped their feet on the ground and used the momentum to soar into the sky. They pounced on Murong in the void. You're courting death. Murong roared. He also stomped his foot on the ground and used the momentum to soar into the sky. He turned into a stream of light and charged at the two primal chaos ancestral saints. Little junior brother, Huyan Inghao and the others were shocked when they saw Murong attack. They all wanted to stop him. However, they didn't even have the strength to stand up. In the end, they could only watch as Murong pounced on them. Die! The two sides weren't very far from each other to begin with. In a flash, they collided. When they were about to come into contact, Murong attacked. He didn't use any moves because even a lost technique couldn't display its power without the support of power. As a result, Murong only sent out two ordinary punches to kill his opponent. Chapter 1450. Bang! Bang! In the blink of an eye, the two sides collided. After two earth-shattering explosions, the scene of Murong exploding was not what everyone had expected. At the same time, two blood-curdling screams were heard. At the same time, everyone saw two black figures rapidly retreating. They were the two primal chaos ancestral saints of the sacred race. At this moment, they were flying backward at a speed faster than when they had arrived. What's going on? Aside from Murong, everyone else was shocked by the scene before them. Was Murong so powerful? Those two did not even have the strength to resist. However, what shocked everyone even more was yet to come. Bang! All of a sudden, the primal chaos ancestor saint, who had been flying backwards and drawing two parabolas in the void, exploded at the same time, turning into a cloud of blood mist that drifted into the sky. One-hit kill. Everyone was stunned. Although the two primal chaos ancestral saints did not have good physical bodies, they were still too weak. In fact, everyone knew that it was not because the two primal chaos ancestral saints were too weak, but because Murong was too strong. The primal chaos ancestral saints are just SOSO. After killing the two primal chaos ancestral saints in a single blow, Murong was unable to borrow any momentum and landed back on the ground. He stood tall, like an ancient sacred mountain, looking indifferently at the people of the sacred race. An aura that looked down on the world emanated from his body, shaking heaven and earth as it rushed in all directions. The sacred race leader frowned slightly, and his face darkened. Trash, you guys go and kill him. The rest of you, kill the rest of the infernal society. Whoosh before the young man's voice died away, for primal chaos ancestral saints had already stepped out of the crowd. They swept across the void like lightning and rushed toward Murong. These four people's physical bodies were much stronger than the previous one and should have reached the level of a low-grade sacred weapon. However, it was all the same to Murong. While these four people were making their moves, more than a dozen figures emerged from the crowd. They spread their bodies on the ground and rushed towards Huyan Inghao and the others. Seeing this, the expressions of Huyan Inghao and the others changed slightly. Divide and kill. Murong sneered. This strategy might work on other people, but it was absolutely useless against Murong. It's useless. Today, all of you will die. Murong said in a cold voice as he took a step forward. Boom! When he stomped on the ground, it was as if an ancient sacred mountain had broken through the air and was pressing down on the ground. A huge force erupted from his feet, directly crushing the ground beneath him. On the other hand, Murong borrowed the force, and his entire body turned into a gust of wind. With his shio sound, he disappeared on the spot. When he reappeared, he was already in front of the 4 primal chaos ancestral saints. Go to hell. One of the primal chaos ancestral saints roared as his iron fist exploded. His punch broke the void, and with lightning speed, he charged towards Murong Yu's chest. If Murong Yu's physical body was hit by his punch, it would explode. The primal chaos ancestral saint was confident. However, you overestimate yourself. Today, I'll show you what it means to have a powerful physical body. Murong Yu roared. He didn't seem to have made any movements, but his entire body simply charged forward. The primal chaos ancestral saint who attacked suddenly revealed a sinister smile. It was true that Murong Yu's physical body was powerful, but he was too arrogant. However, his sinister smile soon froze. Boom! The primal chaos ancestral saint's fist violently smashed onto Murong Yu's chest. However, the expected scene of Murong Yu exploding with a single punch did not happen. On the contrary, with a crack, the primal chaos ancestral saint felt as though he had hit an extremely hard piece of sacred iron. Then, an extremely terrifying force shook Murong Yu's chest. In an instant, the primal chaos ancestral saint did not even have time to react. His arm was already shattered into pieces. At the same time, a sharp pain quickly spread from his arm to his physical body and brain. After smashing the primal chaos ancestral saint's fist, Murong Yu's body did not stop at all. Instead, he continued to charge forward at an extremely fast speed, like blowing dry branches. In a tenth of an instant, the primal chaos ancestral saint's entire arm was shattered into pieces. It was only at this moment that he came to his senses. With a thought, he was about to explosively retreat backwards. However, his reaction was fast, but Murong Yu was faster. Just as he was about to retreat, Murong Yu's physical body had already collided with his physical body. Boom! After a dull bang, the primal chaos ancestral saint exploded into a cloud of blood mist in the void. He could not be more dead. The difference between a low-grade sacred weapon's physical body and a high-grade sacred weapon's physical body was as huge as a piece of tofu and a hammer. Murong Yu did not need to move at all. He directly smashed the primal chaos ancestral saint into pieces without any suspense. Shock. While everyone was shocked, Murong Yu had already taken another step forward. With a sway of his body, he moved to the side. Boom! The primal chaos ancestral saint, who had paused due to shock, had already been smashed into pieces by Murong Yu. At the same time, Murong Yu had already reached out his hand and slammed it down on the 3rd primal chaos ancestral saint. Die! The primal chaos ancestral saint's reaction was extremely fast. Although he was shocked by Murong Yu, he was still shocked. In the face of Murong Yu's slamming hand, he quickly threw 2 punches in a heaven-shattering form. Crack! However, how could his tofu-like body resist Murong Yu's powerful body that was as strong as a hammer? In the blink of an eye, he was killed by Murong Yu's palm. In 2 breaths' time, Murong Yu had killed 3 primal chaos ancestral saints. The terrifying battle record immediately stunned everyone present. Whoosh! Without any hesitation, the 4th primal chaos ancestral saint's body swayed, and he retreated rapidly. He was really frightened by Murong Yu. Under other circumstances, he could kill Murong Yu millions of times with a single finger. However, although he was a primal chaos ancestral saint, and could be said to be at the peak of the saint's world, he was still terrified. But today, he was frightened by the ant in his eyes. Where do you think you're going? Murong Yu roared and took a step forward. He turned into a stream of light and charged forward. He was extremely fast and caught up with the fleeing primal chaos ancestral saint almost instantly. Then he punched out violently. Without any suspense, the primal chaos ancestral saint was blown apart by Murong Yu's punch. At this point, the 4 primal chaos ancestral saints who had surrounded Murong Yu were killed. During this process, the 4 primal chaos ancestral saints didn't even touch the corner of Murong Yu's clothes. Powerful, extremely powerful. Shocking, extremely shocking. After killing the 4 primal chaos ancestral saints in a row, Murong Yu stood on the spot like an ancient war god. Waves of unstoppable and terrifying aura constantly erupted from his body, making him even more powerful and invincible. He was like a war god who had transmigrated from the ancient times. At this moment, everyone was looking at Murong Yu. Aside from shock, there was only shock in their eyes. Even the sacred race experts who were charging towards Huyin Yinghao and the others stopped because of this. I said that all of you will die. Murong Yu suddenly roared and stomped the ground. He shattered the void with one step and quickly charged toward the sacred race experts who were charging towards Huyin Yinghao and the others. Kill him. When they saw Murong Yu pouncing over, a trace of fear flashed through the eyes of the dozen or so experts. Yes, these primal chaos ancestral saints were actually frightened by Murong Yu, an undead stage saint. After a loud roar, the dozens of people all charged towards Murong Yu. They all knew that if they couldn't kill Murong Yu, they would all be killed by Murong Yu one by one in the end, unless they left the area covered by the Great Formation. However, Murong Yu was so fast that they didn't have time to leave. And here, they were absolutely no match for Murong Yu. Good timing. Murong Yu wasn't surprised when he saw the crowd surrounding him. Instead, he was overjoyed and roared. With a leap, he jumped into the crowd. Then, a violent attack blasted out. Bang! 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 At this moment, Murong Yu was like a wolf in a flock of sheep. These primal chaos ancestral saints were no match for Murong Yu at all. They couldn't withstand Murong Yu's every move at all. Murong Yu punched out, and a primal chaos ancestor saint let out a blood-curdling scream. Murong Yu directly killed the primal chaos ancestor saint. He lashed out with a kick, and another primal chaos ancestral saint screamed as he was also killed. Murong Yu leaned to the side and slammed his shoulder into another primal chaos ancestral saint. Similarly, this primal chaos ancestral saint wasn't spared and was killed. In the blink of an eye, Murong Yu killed 5 primal chaos ancestral saints. At least 1/3 of the experts were killed. Haha! Primal chaos ancestral saints are nothing more than this. So, it feels so good to kill primal chaos ancestral saints. All of you come at me. I'll send all of you on your way today. Murong Yu roared with laughter as he looked down at the world with disdain. An unparalleled aura burst out and swept out in all directions. He opened and closed wide, weaving and weaving, his momentum unstoppable. Kill him for me. Seeing how powerful Murong Yu was, the young leader of the primal chaos ancestral saints had an extremely gloomy face. He was filled with killing intent as he commanded the remaining primal chaos ancestral saints to charge at Murong Yu. Although the primal chaos ancestral saints were stunned by Murong Yu, they were also enraged by Murong Yu's arrogance. Even without the young leader's order, they couldn't help but attack. A large group of primal chaos ancestral saints surrounded Murong Yu without any rules or dignity. If this were to spread, they would lose a lot of face. Furthermore, even though there were dozens of people surrounding Murong Yu, they were all suppressed by him. Chapter 1451. Bang! 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 After a storm of attacks, the dozens of primal chaos ancestors couldn't withstand Murong Yu's attacks at all. More than half of them were killed. Murong Yu, on the other hand, was like an ancient war god. His figure was tall, and his aura soared to the heavens. During this process, he allowed the attacks of the primal chaos ancestral saints to bombard him, causing a series of loud booms to erupt. But Murong Yu was unaffected. When these people's attacks landed on his body, it was like they were tickling him. There was no threat at all. What a terrifying body. It's at least a high-grade sacred artifact. Everyone was shocked and looked at Murong Yu in disbelief. Even Huyin Yinghao and the others of the Seamless Society were the same. The fleshly body of a high-grade, sacred tier artifact. Everyone present was shocked. The people from the Infernal Society were only frightened, but the people from the Holy Race were shocked. If he had such a powerful body at the Primal Chaos Ancestor Saint realm, we might not be so surprised. But he's only in the imperishable realm. An imperishable realm cultivator with a high-grade sacred artifact body? How'd he do it? Isn't this too terrifying? The same thought appeared in everyone's mind. Logically speaking, Murongyu's body and cultivation level didn't match at all. It was already heaven-defying for an imperishable realm saint to have a low-grade sacred artifact body. A high-grade sacred artifact body? Shouldn't he be at least in the Sacred King realm? No, even Sacred King realm experts couldn't refine a high-grade sacred artifact body. They needed to be at least in the ancestral saint realm. But what they didn't know was that Murongyu was originally a celestial chaos body, a supreme physique, the strongest physique in the world. There was no other. It suppressed everything and despised everything. Little junior brother is too fierce. I didn't expect him to save us today. Truly unbelievable. Lu Xiankai's expression relaxed as he looked at the unstoppable Murongyu. Hu Yinninghao and the others also nodded slightly. Their hearts, which had been in their throats all this time, finally calmed down. Murongyu was so ferocious, he was definitely the strongest existence in this array. Now that Murongyu had killed more than half of the primal chaos ancestral saints, the battle was under Murongyu's control. In other words, the situation was already under Murongyu's control. The saints were no longer a threat to Murongyu and the infernal agents, unless they removed the formation. With Murongyu's imperishable realm strength, the sacred race experts didn't even need to do anything. They could crush him to death with their aura alone. However, if the formation was removed, Lu Xiankai and the others would instantly recover their strength. They were all experts from the infernal path. Even if they were at the same level, each of them could take on 10 people. If it weren't for this, the sacred race wouldn't have needed to use spirit arrays to suppress them. With their advantage in numbers, they could wipe out Hu Yinninghao and the others in one fell swoop. Whoosh! Perhaps they were frightened by Murongyu, or perhaps they knew that they wouldn't be able to complete today's plan. The young man leading the Sacred Clan group had been glaring at Murongyu with incomparably cold eyes. His eyes were filled with resentment. No matter how one looked at him, this young man wasn't simple. Murongyu had noticed him from the very beginning. Although he was brave and invincible in this great array, he had always been cautious. Otherwise, it was very likely that he would fail miserably. Suddenly, the young man's figure swayed. Murongyu was startled, thinking that the young man was about to attack. However, he soon discovered that the young man didn't do anything. Instead, he unfolded his body and shot into the distance. He actually fled. Murongyu was stunned. Then, the remaining infernal agents and sacred race experts were also stunned. Obviously, no one expected the young man to flee without putting up a fight. In fact, this was the smart thing to do. He clearly wasn't a match for Murongyu, but he didn't flee. Was he waiting for Murongyu to come and kill him? I said, "None of you can escape." Seeing the young man flee, Murongyu's eyes flashed with cold, killing intent. It was obvious that the young man had planned all of this. He wanted to exterminate the infernal agents in one fell swoop. Murongyu had long since sentenced someone like him to death. However, the young man was extremely fast. As long as he rushed out of the great array, Murongyu wouldn't be able to do anything to him. Moreover, the one who would be killed might be Murongyu instead. Sky-destroying Starnet. Suddenly, Murongyu let out an explosive shout. Immediately, the soul pool in his soul space began to surge violently. Waves of incomparably powerful soul force swept out, tearing apart heaven and earth. Boom! At this moment, everyone present except for Murongyu felt their souls be enveloped by a terrifying aura of death. Even the infernal agents were no exception. However, the sacred race experts who bore the brunt of it all paled. Some of them who reacted quickly didn't know what was going on, but their instincts told them to run. Therefore, they turned around and fled. Soul attack. Suddenly, there was a cry of alarm from the infernal agents. No one knew who saw it first. Soul attack. Hearing this, the sacred race experts trembled violently. Following that, waves of fear began to emanate from his soul. In this great array, their cultivation and strength were suppressed. Only their physical strength was left. However, they didn't consider that their soul force wasn't suppressed. It wasn't that they didn't think about it, but there were too few spiritual saints in the sacred world. 1 in a billion. Moreover, they already knew that there were no spiritual saints among the infernal agents. Therefore, tragedy befell them. Incomparably terrifying soul force spread out wildly, intertwining in the sky to form a spiritual net. Then, it enveloped the primal chaos ancestral saints. Without the obstruction of energy, the primal chaos ancestral saints couldn't withstand Murong Yu's soul attack at all. Their souls were as weak as tofu. Murong Yu directly suppressed them. Soul Devourer, devour them. After suppressing their souls, Murong Yu roared in his heart. Therefore, the souls of the primal chaos ancestral saints were forcefully pulled out by Murong Yu. In the end, they were suppressed in Murong Yu's soul pool. Murong Yu's soul pool churned as these souls were refined and turned into soul energy, fusing into Murong Yu's soul pool. With the replenishment of the souls of these experts, the soul force in Murong Yu's soul pool increased a little. Although it wasn't much, it was better than nothing. Plop, plop. At this time, the primal chaos ancestral saints whose souls were destroyed fell to the ground. Murong Yu didn't look at them again. He took a step forward and chased after the young man who was fleeing in front. Now, only this person was left. Murong Yu had to kill him. The young man's face was malicious. His eyes flickered with anger and fear. He was in the primal chaos ancestral saint realm. Today, he was chased by an eternal realm saint like a stray dog. This was intolerable. As long as I leave the range of the formation, I am the strongest. No matter if your physical body is an upper sacred weapon or an ancestral weapon, you will die. The young man roared in his heart as he fled quickly. This guy's face was ferocious. He actually regretted it. For the first time, he regretted setting up such a large formation and covering such a large area. If it was smaller, he would have rushed out of the range of the formation. Once he rushed out of the formation, he could easily turn around and kill Murong Yu. However, the truth was the truth. There was no changing it. However, he wasn't a person who would wait for death. He used his fastest speed and rushed out. However, even though he was fast, Murong Yu was even faster. In less than a few breaths of time, Murong Yu was already not far behind him. Take my fist. Murong Yu roared and threw out a punch. The young man's heart was instantly enveloped by an extremely strong aura of death. He knew that if he died, they would all die on his body. If that happened, he would follow in the footsteps of the other primal chaos ancestral saints and be blown apart by a single punch from Murong Yu. Dying. There was no need to think at all. The young man roared and threw a punch out. At the same time, his body did not stop at all. He continued to shoot forward at an extremely fast speed. Crack. There was no suspense at all. The moment the two fists collided, the young man's hands were completely shattered into powder. However, the young man was not an ordinary person after all. However, he borrowed the power of this attack to soar into the sky and escape. You can't escape. Murong Yu's body swayed slightly, and a look of surprise appeared on his face. Although it was only a brief exchange, Murong Yu was surprised to find that the young man's body was much stronger than his subordinates. At least a middle-grade sacred weapon body. Murong Yu's eyes flashed with a cold light. He was a little surprised and curious about the young man's identity. If he hadn't made a breakthrough in his body in the lightning small world and achieved a high-grade sacred weapon body, he wouldn't know who was stronger between him and the young man. However, the young man's body was so strong, and he had so many primal chaos ancestral saints under his command. He must be a genius from a certain force or race in the sacred clan. Was today's attack just the young man's plan or the sacred clan's conspiracy? In fact, what Murong Yu didn't know was that the young man was indeed very strong. Huyin, Inghao, and the others were all suppressed by him alone. The other primal chaos ancestral saints were only controlling the formation. However, All of this had nothing to do with Muronyu. No matter what kind of conspiracy it was, there was only one word for anyone who dared to stand in his way: kill. Thus, Muronyu let out a roar as he leaped up and charged at the youth once again. Chapter 1452. Both of them had extremely powerful bodies. One of them had reached the level of a mid-grade sacred artifact, while Muronyu's body had reached the terrifying level of a high-grade sacred artifact. Therefore, the two of them were still able to explode with terrifying speed despite being sealed and suppressed by the Great Formation. Like two streaks of light, the two of them tore through the air and quickly charged into the distance. However, the distance between the two of them was getting closer and closer. Muronyu's body was much stronger than the youth's, so naturally, his speed was also much faster. In a few breaths of time, Muronyu was about to catch up to the youth. However, this distance was still within the range of Muronyu's soul attack. However, Muronyu didn't want to kill the youth just like that. He wanted to capture the youth alive. After all, these people wanted to ambush and kill all of the Infernal Society's disciples. He wanted to know if this was just the youth's actions or the actions of the Sacred Ones. However, although Muronyu was fast, the youth wasn't slow either. As one fled and the other chased, they quickly rushed to the edge of the Great Formation. In a few breaths of time, the youth would step out of the Great Formation, escape the suppression of the Great Formation, and recover the terrifying strength of the primal chaos ancestor sage. At that time, he would be able to kill Muronyu with a flip of his hand. Even if Muronyu's soul had reached the 3-star level, he still wouldn't be able to kill the youth. It wasn't that Muronyu wasn't strong enough, but that the difference between them was too great. An imperishable soul sage was strong, but he still couldn't destroy everything. The difference of 5 major realms wasn't something a soul sage could make up for. Of course, if Muronyu's soul could reach the 9-star level, killing the primal chaos ancestor sage wouldn't be a problem. Soon, seeing that he was getting closer and closer to the outside of the Great Formation, the youth became more and more anxious. This was because the distance between him and Muronyu was also getting closer and closer. Moreover, he knew that Muronyu was a soul sage, but he didn't use a soul attack on him. He only had to think about it to know what Muronyu was thinking. As long as I leave the formation, all of you will die. The young man laughed viciously as he sped up. As long as he regained his strength, Muronyu would be no match for him. Even if there were 100 of them, he could still kill them with a flip of his hand. Muronyu was also a little anxious. Once the young man escaped from the formation, they would be in danger. Humph! Muronyu's face darkened, and his eyes flashed with cold, killing intent. No matter what, he would not let this young man go. Anyone who wanted to kill him had to die. Muronyu had only recently joined the Infernal Agency. However, the members of the Infernal Tao, from the Tao Master to the 17 senior apprentice brothers and sisters, all treated him very well. Although they didn't spend much time together, Muronyu could feel their sincerity. They were truly good to Muronyu, and they were not scheming to seize everything from him and suppress him. The gap between them and the true Martial Temple's inner disciples was too big. Muronyu had always been the kind of person who would respect others tenfold if they respected him. If others treated him well, he would treat them even better. This was Muronyu. Therefore, when he learned that Huyin Yinghao and the others were in danger, he was anxious to rescue them. When he learned that the young man wanted to wipe out the entire Infernal Agency in one fell swoop, the killing intent in his heart surged. These people had to die. Muronyu's face was ice cold, and terrifying killing intent erupted from him, shaking heaven and earth. Swish! Swish! At this time, the young man had already stepped out of the formation's edge and came into contact with the myriad Devil's Valley outside. Almost at the same time, he felt an incomparably surging power surging out of his body, crazily escaping towards his limbs and bones. This was the energy that was suppressed in the depths of his body, meridians, and Saint Godhead by the formation. The moment he rushed out of the formation, he recovered to his peak. Asterisk roar. Asterisk feeling the surging energy in his body. The young man couldn't help but roar towards the sky. This feeling of recovering his strength was really good. Although only half of his body had rushed out of the formation's edge, he had recovered more than half of his strength. However, even if it was only this amount of power, he could still suppress it with one hand. The anger and grievance of being chased by Murong Yu was about to be vented. With a long roar, the young man turned around and looked at Murong Yu. His eyes were ice cold, and a chilling, killing intent surged out, shaking the air towards Murong Yu. However, when he saw Murong Yu, he didn't see Murong Yu showing any fear. On the contrary, he saw a trace of a smile on Murong Yu's face. Murong Yu's face was full of smiles. When he saw Murong Yu smile, the young man couldn't help but feel even more furious. But he didn't know why. But Murong Yu's smile made him feel very uncomfortable. In fact, his heart was shrouded by an extremely strong aura of death. He's just an ant in the undead stage. Even if I stand here and let him kill me, he won't be able to kill me. The young man was shocked at first, but he quickly discarded this thought. Die! At this moment, Murong Yu roared. The young man punched out, exploding with a terrifying power, and wanted to kill Murong Yu with one punch. But before he punched out, his heart skipped a beat. He's a soul saint. Soul attack. The young man suddenly remembered Murong Yu's other identity. He immediately knew where the aura of death in his heart came from. In shock, he withdrew his fist. At the same time, the terrifying power was withdrawn, and like a surging river, it rushed into the soul space, trying to protect his soul. At the same time, he retreated rapidly, trying to completely leave the formation's range to recover all his strength. But how could Murong Yu allow him to escape? When the young man was about to leave the formation's range, Murong Yu had already launched an attack. And it was the most violent attack. Rumble. The violent power tore through the void like a surging river, rushing toward the young man's soul. Before the young man could react, Murong Yu's soul power had already rushed into his soul space, carrying a terrifying aura that could destroy heaven and earth, and quickly strangled the young man's soul. The primal chaos ancestor sage's soul was already very powerful, but in the face of Murong Yu's 3-star soul, his soul was as weak as a piece of tofu. Shuddering, the intense aura of death shrouded the young man's soul, and a huge pressure almost crushed his soul. You want to kill me? Go to hell. The young man suppressed the fear in his heart and roared. An incomparably berserk power shot towards Murong Yu's soul power. At the same time, his divine fist was invincible, and he punched Murong Yu again, besieging way to save Zhao. If Murong Yu continued to kill his soul, he could also kill Murong Yu with one punch. It was a humiliation for the primal chaos ancestor sage to use such a mutually destructive method against an eternal stage saint. But he didn't care. It was better to be humiliated than to die. Moreover, as long as he killed Murong Yu and the others today, who would know about what happened today? Murong Yu narrowed his eyes. With a thought, the Yin-Yang cauldron erupted with a terrifying threat, swallowing and spitting out primal chaos fire that could burn everything and destroy everything. It smashed through the void and ruthlessly smashed down. At the same time, the Hichu Luoshu shot out from Murong Yu's body and transformed into a picture scroll, erupting with a faint yellow holy light that blocked between him and the young man. Time reversal. Murong Yu roared in his heart after summoning 2 peerless saint weapons. The power of time vibrated out and hit the young man in a flash. At this moment, an inexplicable feeling appeared in the young man's heart. It was indescribably strange, but he didn't know what was going on. However, he soon found out the truth. He punched the Hichu Luoshu, but the Hichu Luoshu was like the moon in the water, with only a layer of ripples. Then his hand went straight through the Hichu Luoshu. There was no obstruction at all. What's going on? The young man was shocked. With his experience, he naturally knew that something was wrong. Boom! At the same time, the Yin-Yang cauldron had already smashed down. The young man roared and threw a punch at the sky, intending to send the yin-yang cauldron flying. But what shocked and frightened him was that his attack went straight through the yin-yang cauldron. Bang! While the young man was shocked, the yin-yang cauldron had already smashed into the young man with terrifying power. A terrifying power burst out, causing cracks to appear on the young man's body. This was also because the young man's body was extremely strong. If it was an ordinary primal chaos ancestor saint, he would have been shattered into dust. Even so, the young man didn't feel good, because the terrifying power of chaos had already wrapped around him. Chi-chi, with a thought, the young man's violent power vibrated out, forming a power shield to protect his body. At the same time, he wanted to extinguish the flame of chaos. However, the moment his power came into contact with the flame of chaos, it quickly burned. The flame of chaos could burn everything. No joke. Seeing this, Murongyu was shocked. The young man was a true primal chaos ancestor, saint super expert. The flame of chaos could even burn his power? It should be known that before this, even the primal chaos ancestor saint's power couldn't be burned. The flame of chaos had evolved. Murongyu was overjoyed and continued to control the yin-yang cauldron to vibrate. At the same time, the Hichu Luoshu quickly enlarged and enveloped the young man. Soul attack, yin-yang cauldron, Hichu Luoshu suppression. Three things at the same time. For a moment, the young man was in a panic. Capture him. Murongyu took a step forward and roared. At the same time, he stretched out his hand and grabbed at the young man. Chapter 1453. Explode. The young man's face turned gloomy. Although he didn't know what was going on at the moment, he was a Chaos Ancestor Saint-level expert. Be it combat experience or other aspects, he was extremely rich. Immediately, the power in his body surged, and like a violent storm, it blasted out crazily. Bang! The void around the young man was shattered. The flame of chaos, which had been burning the young man's power, was immediately extinguished. At the same time, the young man's terrifying power exploded the power of time that Murongyu applied on him. The power of time exploded, and the young man immediately returned to the space-time they were in from the alternate space-time. Immediately, the young man's body relaxed. Then, the young man took a step forward and left the alternate space-time completely. But at this moment, Murongyu's attack came down swiftly and violently. Die! After regaining his freedom, any attack from Murongyu was weak in the eyes of the young man. He roared and slashed the universal yin-yang cauldron with his right hand like a sword. Bang! The universal yin-yang cauldron was sent flying. It wasn't that the universal yin-yang cauldron wasn't strong enough, but that Murongyu was too weak and couldn't unleash the full power of the universal yin-yang cauldron. After sending the universal yin-yang cauldron flying, the young man took a step forward and slammed his body into Hichu Luoshu. After a loud bang, Hichu Luoshu was sent flying. Little bastard, die. The young man's eyes were filled with terrifying, murderous intent. He reached out his other hand and grabbed Murongyu. With a violent shake of his hand, he shattered Murongyu's rapidly descending hand. At the same time, his large hand tore through space and time as it ruthlessly smashed towards Murongyu. The young man had recovered all his strength. Any attack from Murongyu, including soul attacks, couldn't hurt him. Murongyu was only one step away from killing the young man. But in the end, it was all for naught. Murongyu sighed in his heart, and he retreated in a flash. He couldn't do anything to the young man now, but it was also impossible for the young man to kill him. As long as Murongyu retreated back into the range of the formation, no matter how powerful the young man's attack was, it would not be able to kill him. This was because once the power entered the formation, it would be suppressed by the formation, unless he could shatter the formation with a single slap. Rumble! The young man's claw even shattered the sky. However, he couldn't do anything to Murongyu. All of you will die. A terrifying holy light erupted from the young man's body. Waves of earth-shaking aura burst out like a tidal wave. It was extremely terrifying. He stood at the edge of the battle, his expression indifferent. His eyes were cold as he stared at Murong Yu and the other members of the never-ending underworld. He glared at Murong Yu with venomous eyes, causing all the hair on his body to stand on end. Suddenly, the young man smiled sinisterly. "Do you think you'll be safe after hiding in the formation? Wrong. If I want you to die, all of you will die." As he spoke, the young man flipped his hands and formed a series of obscure seals that blasted into the depths of space-time. Oh no, he's going to remove the formation. When they saw the young man's actions, Murong Yu and the others' hearts skipped a beat, and their expressions changed. In the formation, Murong Yu was the strongest with his incomparably powerful physical body. However, once the formation suppression disappeared, Murong Yu was just an ant. He could easily kill him with just his aura alone. Huyan Yinghao and the other members of the never-ending underworld were all seriously injured. Even if the formation was removed, they couldn't quickly recover their strength. In this way, they would all be killed in the end. Danger! Danger! Quick, let's rush out. Huyan Yinghao and the others were anxious, and they all wanted to rush out quickly. However, they were seriously injured, and even walking was difficult. How could they stop the young man? Murong Yu's face darkened. After entering the formation, his strength was suppressed, and he couldn't take out any treasures at all. The yin-yang cauldron and the Hichu Luoshu had already turned into streams of light and entered his body the moment he entered the formation. The moment the formation was removed, Murong Yu still had a chance to take out the Hichu Luoshu and take Huyan Yinghao and the others in before he teleported away. However, the young man definitely wouldn't give him the chance. With the primal chaos ancestor's strength, Murong Yu didn't have a chance at all. With the young man's hatred for Murong Yu would probably be killed before he could even take out the Hichu Luoshu. "Senior brother, I'll treat your injuries first." Murong Yu's face was gloomy, and he felt a strong sense of danger. However, he was quick-witted, and the more dangerous the situation, the calmer he was. In an instant, he thought of the best way. It was the only thing he could do, and that was to treat Huyan Yinghao and the others. As long as they recovered their strength, not to mention a mere young man, even 10 of them wouldn't be a match for his senior brothers. Hearing this, Huyan Yinghao and the others just looked at Murong Yu and smiled bitterly. Murong Yu's performance was beyond their expectations. However, the gap between them was like a natural chasm. With Murong Yu's strength, how could he heal their injuries? The gap between their strength and quality was too big. It was like a child who had just learned how to walk wanting to help a strong man who had fallen down. Although he wanted to, he was powerless. Seeing everyone's gaze, Murong Yu knew what they were thinking. However, how could he know without trying? Moreover, he was confident in his life force. He didn't say anything and took a step forward to arrive in front of Yu Yangjia. "Senior brother, let me treat your injuries first," Murong Yu said in a deep voice. Yu Yangjia was the strongest among the 17 disciples. If he was treated first, it would be easier to deal with the young man. Yu Yangjia shook his head. Just as he was about to refuse, he saw the confidence in Murong Yu's eyes. Therefore, he opened his mouth but didn't refuse. Instead, he nodded and sat down cross-legged. Seeing this, Huyan Yinghao and the others couldn't help but feel a little surprised. They didn't know why Yu Yangjia agreed. If he couldn't be treated, wouldn't they have missed a good opportunity? However, when they thought of Murong Yu's heaven-defying performance, Huyan Yinghao and the others suddenly had a glimmer of hope. They all looked deeply at Murong Yu, then quickly rushed to the edge of the large formation. Rumble! The young man was indeed removing the large formation. When Yu Yangjia sat down cross-legged, the entire large formation shook violently. In an instant, it was like a storm, and large areas of the void shattered. In fact, everyone in the array felt as if something between the heavens and the earth was slowly being pulled away. Everyone knew that this was the reason why the large formation was about to be pulled away. "Quick, stop him!" Huyan Yinghao roared angrily. He quickly rushed toward the young man, and so did Lu Xiankai and the others. However, they weren't much faster. With their speed, it was impossible to stop the young man. The young man grinned as he looked at Huyan Inghao and the others who were rushing toward him. His eyes were full of ridicule, although he had lost dozens of chaotic ancestor saints this time. However, as long as he killed the members of the Seamless Society, it would be worth it even if hundreds of chaotic ancestor saints were killed. Rumble. The large formation shook more and more violently, and space continued to shatter. Everyone felt that the great battle that had originally enveloped heaven and earth was about to break through the void. Hu Yinninghao and the others became more and more anxious. At this moment, Murong Yu's hands had already landed on Yu Yangjia's body. Rumble. Suddenly, a torrent of life force gushed out from Murong Yu's hands and rushed into Yu Yangjia's body. Yu Yangjia originally had an indifferent look on his face, although he was infected by the confidence in Murong Yu's eyes. However, he didn't really believe that Murong Yu had the ability to heal him. He just wanted to give it a try. However, at this moment, Yu Yangjia was shocked. The life force contained in Murong Yu's life force was too terrifying. It was ancient, and powerful. Wherever the life force passed, Yu Yangjia's injuries rapidly healed at the speed of his physical body. No matter what realm an expert had reached, no matter how powerful he was, he must have a strong physical body. The physical body was the carrier and foundation of all experts' explosive power. For example, if two strong men were evenly matched in strength, but one of them was seriously injured, then the injured strong man would immediately be suppressed by his opponent. There was no suspense. It was the same for saints. If their physical body was too damaged, it would affect their strength. Yu Yangjia was beaten half to death before, and his physical body was almost shattered. Even if the formation was removed, his strength couldn't return to its original peak. At most, he could only use 50% of his strength. It was the same for the others. Now, under the cleansing of Murong Yu's life force, his injured body quickly recovered. Shock! Shock! While Yu Yangjia was shocked, Murong Yu also breathed a sigh of relief in his heart. Although he was confident, he wasn't 100% sure. Fortunately, it's only healing the physical body. If it's replenishing strength, I won't be able to do anything. Murong Yu thought in his heart, and the life force in his body rushed into Yu Yangjia's body more violently. Boom! After an earth-shattering explosion, Murong Yu and the others felt the strength suppressed deep in their bodies rapidly surging out. They were gradually recovering their strength and regaining control of their own strength. At that moment, the young man finally removed the formation. Ha ha ha, all of you will die. The young man from the sacred clan laughed loudly. The moment the formation was removed, he had already struck out with his palm. It was earth-shattering and earth-shattering, carrying a world-destroying aura. It enveloped Murong Yu and the others and viciously covered them. It's over. Hu Yinninghao and the others' faces were ashen. The injuries to their physical bodies were too severe. Although they had regained control of their strength, none of them could use 50% of their peak strength. They couldn't block the young man's palm at all. Chapter 1454. At this moment, the hearts of Huyan Inghao and the others were enveloped by an intense aura of death. The aura of despair instantly enveloped everyone. At this moment, everyone's hearts were in complete despair. All of them could only look at the rapidly descending hand of the youth with ashen faces. At this moment, they did not even have half of their original strength. Even a dozen of them could not withstand a single blow from the youth. However, they were not people who were waiting for death. With a single thought, all kinds of attacks gushed out like raging waves, frantically trying to strangle the youth's descending hand. Their saint artifacts and magic treasures were even faster than their attacks, and they had already smashed into the young man's descending hand before they could. Rumble. None of the magic treasures and sacred artifacts of the infernal sect were ordinary. However, no matter how powerful the magic treasures and sacred artifacts were, the power they could unleash depended on the strength of their owners. Huyan Inghao and the others were not even half of their original strength. Therefore, Their magic treasures and sacred artifacts were all sent flying by the terrifying pressure before they could even touch the youth's descending hand. Asterisk puff, puff, puff. Asterisk Huyin Inghao and the others spat out blood at the same time, their injuries worsening. Asterisk chi chi. Asterisk the power they unleashed was completely useless in front of the youth's descending hand. It was annihilated and disappeared between the heavens and the earth. Asterisk whoosh. Asterisk everyone felt as if the sky had darkened. This was because the youth's descending hand was so overwhelming that it even covered the sky. An incomparably frightening coercion swiftly pressed down, causing the fleshly bodies of Huyin Inghao and the others to crumble. Bright red blood gushed out of their bodies like fountains. Blood splattered across the sky. All of you, Dot. The youth grinned maliciously. With a flip of his hand, he was about to crush Huyin Inghao and the other infernal sect disciples into dust. However, at this moment, a strange change occurred. Ha ha! Suddenly, a loud and clear voice came from behind Huyin Inghao and the others. Wherever the voice passed, the void tumbled and shattered. The youth's descending hand seemed to be blocked by a layer of invisible power. For a moment, the hand actually paused for a moment. At this moment, Huyin Inghao and the others, who believed that they were going to die, suddenly felt that the terrifying pressure that was as heavy as a sacred mountain had abruptly lessened. Originally, their physical bodies were about to explode from the pressure. Although the pressure was still there, it was still within the range that they could bear. You want to kill us? Die for me. While Huyin Inghao and the others were still in shock, a voice filled with murderous intent slowly rose from behind them. Huyin Inghao and the others were stunned at first. Then, they became ecstatic and turned to look behind them. Just as they turned their heads, a pure white hand of power appeared out of thin air and slapped towards them. Boom! In the blink of an eye, the two large hands had already collided fiercely in the void. After an earth-shattering explosion, the two large hands were annihilated at the same time. Then, an extremely terrifying shockwave spread out in all directions like a tide. Wherever it passed, the void shattered, shaking the heavens and earth. Fourth senior brother. Fourth junior brother. Almost at the same time, Huyin Inghao and the others cried out in alarm. The person who attacked was Yu Yangjia. At the final moment when they were about to be killed, Yu Yangjia finally recovered his strength. After recovering his strength, he hastily slapped out with his palm and shattered the Sacred Clan youth's attack. Die for me. After Yu Yangjia shattered the Sacred Clan youth's attack with his palm, he took a step forward, smashing through the void and viciously pouncing towards the Sacred Clan youth. At the same time, he attacked again with a fist that could shatter heaven and earth, ruthlessly smashing towards the Sacred Clan youth. The Sacred Clan youth was shocked. He knew how serious Yu Yangjia's injuries were. Under normal circumstances, it would be impossible for him to recover his strength without at least a few years. But now, it's that little bastard. The Sacred Clan youth's cold gaze tore through the void and viciously glared at Murong Yu. Not only did this person have a powerful physical body, but he also killed dozens of his chaotic saints and ruined his plan. Now, he even healed Yu Yangjia's injuries. Even though Murong Yu's cultivation was only at the undead realm, the Sacred Clan youth could feel how terrifying Murong Yu was. This person can't be allowed to live. The Sacred Clan youth roared in his heart. He took a step forward, traversing countless dimensions, and charged towards Murong Yu. Suddenly, an intense aura of death flashed across Murong Yu's heart. He was immediately taken aback and looked at the Sacred Tribe youth. He didn't need to look to know that the Sacred Clan youth wanted to kill him. Only the young man from the Sacred Race wanted to kill him. At that moment, every part of Murong Yu's body seemed to have exploded. Danger, unprecedented danger. The Primal Chaos Ancestor Sage was indeed the Primal Chaos Ancestor Sage. He only wanted to kill Murong Yu, and Murong Yu almost couldn't withstand it. One could only imagine how terrifying the Primal Chaos Ancestor Sage's strength was. Almost without thinking, Murong Yu's figure flashed and retreated. During this process, he still didn't feel safe enough. With a thought, he wanted to charge into the Hichu Luoshu world. But at that moment, your opponent is me. Yu Yangjia's voice sounded. Then, Murong Yu felt a figure flash in front of him. Yu Yangjia's not very tall figure blocked in front of him. Whoosh, the incomparably violent, killing intent immediately dissipated. It wasn't that the Sacred Clan youth didn't want to kill Murong Yu, but that his killing intent was blocked by Yu Yangjia. Boom! After blocking the Sacred Clan youth's killing intent, Yu Yangjia brazenly attacked. Yu Yangjia was indeed the strongest of the 18 disciples of the Unbroken Path. With one punch, the sky collapsed and the earth cracked. The Sacred Clan youth was no match for him at all. He was sent flying with one punch. Kill! After forcing the youth back with one punch, Yu Yangjia roared and took a step forward, pouncing on him. Yu Yangjia was furious that the Sacred Clan youth had almost wiped out the entire Unbroken Path in one fell swoop. Now, he vowed to kill the youth with his own hands. Little junior brother, you're too amazing. How did you cure fourth senior brother? With just one look, the Unbroken Path disciples knew that Yu Yangjia was no longer in danger. Nonsense. The Sacred Clan youth was being suppressed. Of course Yu Yangjia was no longer in danger. So, everyone surrounded Murong Yu. They were all curious and eager to try, but they were all a little embarrassed. Eighth senior brother, I'll treat you first. Murong Yu naturally knew why they were so shocked and embarrassed. It was because they didn't believe that Murong Yu had the ability to treat them. They doubted Murong Yu's ability. So, they naturally felt embarrassed facing Murong Yu now. I was thinking the same thing. Hu Yinninghao laughed and sat down on the ground. Murong Yu didn't say anything and just slapped his palm on Hu Yinninghao's back. All of a sudden, an incomparably vast amount of life force gushed in madly. Seeing the life force healing his physical injuries at a speed visible to the naked eye, Hu Yinninghao laughed in his heart. At the same time, he focused his mind and began to cooperate with the life force to recover. After a while, Hu Yinninghao opened his eyes and jumped up. Little junior brother, I'm done. Let me help fourth senior brother capture that bastard. Hu Yinninghao roared. He took a step forward and disappeared from where he stood. How amazing! Lu Xiankai and the others saw with their own eyes that Hu Yinninghao was healed. All of a sudden, everyone exclaimed in surprise. They were all eager to give a try. Little junior brother, I wonder how much energy you've consumed? Can you still heal? Love-struck senior sister Lu Bingxin came in front of Murong Yu with a strange light in her eyes. She looked at Murong Yu affectionately. Murong Yu shuddered and quickly said, It's okay. This bit of energy is still within my tolerance. Senior sister, I'll help you recover first. Then, without waiting for Lu Bingxin to speak, he poured a huge amount of energy into her. Such powerful energy. Not long after, Lu Bingxin's injuries were completely healed. At this point, Murong Yu had healed the bodies of 3 primal chaos ancestral saints. However, Murong Yu did not seem to have consumed any energy at all. This was a primal chaos ancestral saint, not an ordinary saint. How terrifying was Murong Yu's power? Moreover, every time he healed someone, Murong Yu would repeat the same sentence. It's okay. This bit of energy is still within my tolerance. This little junior brother is really heaven-defying. Everyone was shocked. However, they did not know that Murong Yu did not consume any energy at all. This was because their physical bodies were not strong, so they did not consume much energy. Moreover, every time they consumed, the tree of life's billions of roots in the endless void trembled and swallowed strands of chaotic energy, quickly replenishing Murong Yu's consumption. Many senior brothers and senior sisters of the Infernal Society were healed by Murong Yu one by one. During this process, Murong Yu was also paying attention to the battle on the other side. In fact, Murong Yu could not see the battle between the primal chaos ancestral saints clearly. However, just by looking at the terrifying aura that could shatter heaven and earth and suppress thousands of worlds, Murong Yu was shocked. However, The strength of that sacred race expert was truly formidable. Although he was suppressed by Yu Yangjia could not do anything to him. When Huyin Yinghao also rushed forward, the sacred tribe youth took out a terrifying primal chaos ancestral saint and fought Yu Yangjia and Huyin Yinghao head-on. The primal chaos ancestral saint occasionally flashed a five-colored light, and its aura was monstrous and extremely powerful. A half-step supreme weapon. It was because of this half-step supreme weapon that he could fight Yu Yangjia and Huyin Yinghao head-on. However, Murong knew that the sacred tribe youth would definitely suffer a tragedy in the end. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.